For Chapter 1. Rias was looking out of one of the old schoolhouse's windows, which provided a great view over the school ground. The window was open and the president of the Occult Research Club leaned onto the windowsill, watching down to the schoolyard. She let her gaze wander over the pupils slowly pouring through the main gate before they made their way to their respective classes. It was morning, maybe an hour before lessons would begin, and the school was already very much alive. The crimson-haired beauty scratched her nose as her eyes wandered over a new face. She didn't realize at first, but her gaze returned quickly, following the new guy in his way. Co Academy used to be exclusively for girls, and it was only 2 years ago when the board of directors decided to restructure the academy to allow mixed education. To be honest, Rias imagined it worse. She thought the place would soon be flooded by teenage boys, driven by their hormones. But it could be worse, she assumed. Yes, there were a few hardcore pervs, but other than that, most of the guys here seemed rather decent. Also, there didn't seem to be an awful lot of male students enrolled at all. The vast majority still was female. Rias let her thoughts wander around while she inspected that new face on the schoolyard. She liked having track of who was who. Aquino? Rias called for her best friend and servant. She heard her queen setting a cup of tea down on the table in the clubroom and getting up from the sofa. Yes, President? Aquino replied as she stepped to Ria's side, following her gaze to a rather tall boy with dark black and tousled hair. The school uniform he was wearing didn't manage to hide his exquisite physique. He was very athletic, and the sizes of the male school uniforms seemed to be more for the slender type of person. He had a noticeably broad back and defined muscles, clearly visible in some areas on his suit coat. Rias resisted the urge to bite her lower lip as she watched the young man walking slowly, almost carefully, towards the main schoolhouse. He seemed very calm and collected. For a brief moment, something to his left seemed to draw his attention as he turned to see what it was. Rias didn't know, of course, but she used the chance to look at his face. He had almost unnatural blue eyes, so blue in fact they seemed like blobs of color. But there was something else as well. He seemed to have a scar of some sorts, but before Rias could see what exactly it was, the new guy had already turned away and proceeded to walk to his destination. From where Rias was standing, and from what she saw, the unnamed new figure had a rugged handsomeness to him. He did look a little old, thus Rias wondered which year he was. Or is he a new teacher? But why would he wear the school uniform if he was? No, the new one surely was a student. Who is that? She asked her second in command. The tall black-haired boy with the blue eyes and the scar? Aquino returned, and the club president simply nodded. That is Naruto Uzumaki, Aquino replied, having to concentrate while pronouncing his name. A fourth-year student. He transferred here about a week ago. Rumor says he might be German, but no one knows for sure. He barely talks. I wouldn't go so far to call him shy, but you know. He just doesn't say an awful lot. I see, Rias replied with a faint smile on her lips. Interesting. Thank you, Aquino. Of course, President, the raven-haired beauty replied before she turned away again. She knew that small smile on Rias' face all too well. The Crimson Princess clearly had something in mind, and Aquino was not sure if she liked what it could be. She knew her best friend better than anyone, probably better than she knew herself. Aquino was very well aware of what Rias was searching. She just hoped her friend would find it soon. // Naruto was sitting in class, not paying too much attention to what his math teacher was rambling about. The guy was a nice person, and his lessons surely were interesting, at least for math. But the new transfer student couldn't concentrate even if he wanted to. His legs were hurting. Of course they were, they always were. He sighed loudly and obviously bored, looking out of the open window, hoping to maybe catch a little breath of wind. Naruto, the teacher called for him, but the new one didn't react. He didn't even hear the teacher talk to him. He hadn't realized the 2 times he got called before that either. "Naruto," repeated the math teacher, this time a little louder. Naruto snapped out of his trance. Yes. Sorry." He glanced at the blackboard and took the scribblings and sketched graphs in for a second. "The polynomial converges towards infinity because the root is continuously removable," he answered with a tiered voice. The teacher sighed in a mix of worry and annoyance. "Yes, that's correct, of course," he replied, "but I only wanted you to close the window for us." "What is wrong with this boy? He never talks, but always knows everything. If I just knew what is bothering him, maybe I could help." "Is it because he was just transferred here? Is he homesick?" A girl next to Naruto snickered silently before whispering something to her friend. "Apologies," Naruto muttered before he stood up to close the window. For a fraction of a second his legs weren't hurting anymore. He sat back down as his gaze drifted back out of the window before losing focus. Really, he should not be here. Anyone could have done this mission. Why was he, of all the people who could have gone, dispatched to do this? The organization had gone mushy in their heads. Naruto was sure of it. They knew full well that he needed to move in order to not feel that constant numbing pain all over his body. And they chose to send him on a mission where he would mostly sit around all day? Really? Are you fucking kidding me? Idiots. Hell, now his right arm was starting to hurt, too. Great. He needed to move, needed to punch something, then it would be better soon. But he was forbidden to participate in PE class for a simple reason. Everyone would immediately see one of his biggest secrets. His cover would be blown. There was a moment when he really wished this would happen, then at least he would get to do something with action. Missions which he was actually made for. Missions where he would move around a lot to avoid being seen, missions which were dangerous and full of adrenaline. Not this ridiculous waiting game. He was none of those undercover pretend and deceive bastards. Hell, he didn't even like to talk. He hated people for the most part. He lurked in the shadows till the time for his move came. He could get anywhere unnoticed by utilizing almost impossible ways of getting there. Most of them requiring a strength and endurance an ordinary human could never achieve. Naruto neither was an ordinary human, nor had any difficulties with achieving things they could not. And that's why he was so extremely good in what he was doing. He was the best there was. And he knew it. So did the organization. Which left one question, when they obviously knew about his skills as well, who came up with the extra bright idea of sending him here? To a friggin' school? And why did the old man, the only one who Naruto truly trusted, agree? There had to be something behind it all. Naruto would figure it out. Sooner or later, his target would show up. They always did. And after he disposed her, he would go and ask the old man what the secret behind this mission was. Naruto hoped it wouldn't take too much longer until he was done here. All those people around me. All those people of approximately my physical age, doing what would be normal for them. And yet here I am, pretending to be like them, while we are nothing alike, while I am something different, doing something different. Naruto frowned heavily. He would never get to live a normal life, no matter how much he desired it. His path was set a long time ago. But with a quick glance over at a randomly selected girl in his class, who was just giggling about something with her friend, Naruto knew that he was missing out on something. He barely remembered his youth. The days when he was happy as well. But he was stripped of those things. A long time ago he promised someone very special he would marry her one day. They would have children and live a happy life until the end somewhere far, far away. But she was taken from him on that one day. The day Naruto never thought back to. The day which buried his old life and started his new one. No, he would not be able to lose someone again. Never again. Now, whenever Naruto thought back, it felt like an eternity had already passed. It possibly already had. He didn't even remember her face anymore. It was just a blurry vision of the past. A vision no one would ever be able to live up to. But despite everything, Naruto sometimes caught himself wishing for someone to be there for him. Someone whose loving arms he could fall into when he was on the verge of breaking down. And he was on that verge a lot lately. Naruto was lonely and haunted by the shadows of his past, haunted by the memories of what happened and haunted by the things he had to do since then. Rationally, he was no one for a girlfriend. He dreamed about it, but his mind told him he would only make the girl unhappy and cause her grief and suffering. But deep down in his heart he still desired it. Finally that damn bell rang, indicating the end of this enormously boring math lesson. Naruto wondered if it was only him, who had no problem solving all the supposedly difficult issues in a matter of seconds, or if anyone else had no problem with it either. Looking at the confused faces of his classmates, he was pretty sure the reason being was the former. The black-haired pupil grabbed his backpack and lazily hung it over his shoulder before walking out of the classroom. "Naruto?" the teacher asked and stopped him. The recently transferred student turned around and looked at his teacher with an asking expression. "Are you all right? You seemed rather depressed the last week," the teacher asked him, with genuine worry in his eyes. Naruto just nodded. "I'm fine," he said. When the expression of the teacher didn't change, he quickly added the next best reasonable thing he could come up with. "Just still getting used to things here. It's a little different from home," he said. "Ha, home. Good joke. I don't even know where home is anymore." This seemed to satisfy the teacher at least a little. "I understand that. Should you need anything, feel free to ask me for help. Or any of the other teachers or students, should you be more comfortable with them. I am sure they are all happy to help you," he said with a supportive smile on his lips. Naruto smiled and bowed politely. "Thank you for your concern," he replied, before he turned around to leave. Making his way down the hallway, he reached the stairway down to the exit. Naruto was in no hurry at all, but he tended to walk a slightly faster pace within the school than outside of it, ignoring all the looks he got. Yes, he had a pretty bad scar starting from the middle of his forehead above his right eye, running through his eyebrow down to his cheek. He didn't mind the scar, his vision was not affected by it, which was the only important thing. What he did mind was how people kept staring at him, like he was some kind of monster. Hell, it was only a scar. No biggie. Well, at least not compared to the rest of his body anyway, and surely not the reason for being a monster. Being really glad to have finally reached the abandoned staircase, Naruto jogged down the stone steps rather fast. Being so lost in his thoughts, he overlooked someone coming up the stairs, just making the turn at the mezzanine, like Naruto did. All he noticed was a bunch of almost unnatural red hair crashing into him, before that person was sent flying down onto her bum. He hurried over to her. Damn, he wasn't used to his own strength in peaceful environment. He must have felt like running into a brick wall at full speed. "Apologies," he muttered, "didn't see you." "Don't worry, it's my fault. I should have seen you coming." "You were pretty lost in thought, weren't you?" the redhead asked, still sitting on the floor. Naruto just nodded slowly. He noticed her eyes drifting to his scarf for a fraction of a second, before they returned to his eyes. She didn't flinch or anything. "I am Rias," she said with a polite smile. Rias Gremory. She held a hand out to Naruto, who took it to help the beautiful young lady to her feet. Her soft, delicate fingers disappeared in Naruto's strong hand. Rias was surprised how effortlessly he pulled her to her feet again. He definitely wasn't a weakling. And he also was most definitely way past puberty. He had the body of a man, not the one of a boy, like most of the other male members of Ko Academy. It only made sense, seeing how he was already fourth year and how he also was the only male in both fourth and third year. 2 years can make a hell of a difference. Obviously. Damn, he looks good. Rias had to hide the deep blush rapidly spreading over her cheeks. Naruto Uzumaki, he replied with a cold tone in his voice, doing a cheeky two-fingered salute. It didn't fit together. His voice was basically all fuck off, whereas his gesture was almost ridiculously flirty. Are you unharmed? Or are you in need of medical attention? He inquired with a serious expression on his face. Rias giggled. He sure had a funny way of talking. But she guessed it was only natural for a non-native Japanese speaker to have at least a little trouble. He was pronouncing rather well after all, maybe a little stiff. Also, Rias didn't doubt for a second this guy was German. Damn, talk about emotionless, how very cliché. The only thing which didn't fit the picture everyone had about the Germans was the hair, which was black, not blonde. Other than that, he was a walking stereotype, tall, apparently in rather good shape, cold but polite. It was almost funny. But Rias didn't let herself be fooled by his calm and collected demeanor. With a brief look into his sincere ocean blue eyes, she knew it was not who he really was. Not at all. The crimson-haired princess saw that his eyes had seen too much for his age. They were many, many years older than the man himself. She noticed that his cold manner was a protective system. Rias just knew somehow. Maybe it had to do with her being a devil, maybe it was because she could read people rather easily. Whatever it was, the Crimson Princess looked right through him. It just sparked her interest even more. I'm fine, she waved it off with a seductive smile. He nodded firmly. In that case, I shall leave you alone again. There is business I need to tend to. It was an honor to meet you. Rias of the Grimmery, he said, his voice vacant of all emotion. With a quick nod, he turned around and left her standing there in the stairway, completely speechless. Hell, that was cold. He didn't even give her the chance to reply something. Also, Rias of the Grimmery? Did he? No, it's impossible. She looked at him while he was leaving through the exit, not turning back once. This was odd to say the least. Boys never behaved that calm and collected in her presence. She knew she was good-looking and didn't hesitate to use it whenever she thought it might help her. But that failed miserably today. The accidentally bumping into someone method had always worked just fine. All the boys and girls, which were more often the target, since there weren't an awful lot of boys at Kua Academy, were so embarrassed and stuck around long enough to make sure she was fine. And this time she had plenty of opportunity to get to know them at least a little. Enough to evaluate their character. But apparently Naruto was immune against her charm. Interesting. Rias smiled once again. She liked challenges. // Naruto was on his way back home during this rather pleasant spring evening. The sun was slowly setting and a gentle breeze stroked gently through his hair. Not that Naruto had noticed any of the pleasant characteristics the day presented to him. He was too lost in thought. Could someone please bring salvation upon him by taking him away from this place? He was so pissed off. On the one hand, he wouldn't mind being murdered right now. On the other hand, maybe there was a bright side to it as well. That Rias girl seemed pretty nice to him. He had no idea why he was thinking this, but maybe it was time to leave things behind and start a real life. Maybe he could find someone who would be willing to stay with him, despite his flaws. And maybe he could finally make his peace with what had happened. Maybe she'd forgive him for moving on. Maybe she would want him to move on and not hold on to a fading memory. God knew it would be about time. Truth was, he was tired. So very tired. It was enough. Enough suffering, enough bloodshed. Naruto mentally kicked himself. What was he thinking? Was it let's think about stuff you cannot have day again? First during math and now again, hell, this needed to stop. There were important matters which needed his attention. He needed to concentrate, and the image of that breathtakingly gorgeous red-haired beauty didn't help him concentrate one bit. Besides, he had only spoken 2 sentences with Rias and didn't know anything about her other than her name. But Naruto was lonely, and suddenly her enchanting smile washed over his mind again, followed by that beautiful crimson hair of hers, which he imagined must feel like extra soft silk. The peaceful image of him gently stroking a stray lock of hair behind her ear made him feel warm and forget the pain in his legs for a second. Ah, a man can dream. No. A man cannot dream. This was a job, not free time. He was here to get something done, not to enjoy himself or catch up on his completely non-existent teens. Gosh, another reason why he was not useful for this undercover bullshit. Concentrate on the task at hand, you stupid moron. This was exactly why I prefer combat missions. No one freaking smiles at you. No one would, even if they'd see me. Footsteps behind Naruto suddenly pulled his thoughts back to reality as something set an alarm bell off inside his head. He stopped dead in his tracks. Hello, a shy voice of a girl asked behind him. Naruto slowly turned around to see an average-sized, maybe a little bit on the short side, girl with beautiful black hair. She looked as innocent like a doll and had a deep red blush on her cheeks. Her nervousness was rather obvious. Are you Naruto? She asked carefully. The boy with the incredibly black hair nodded. I am, he confirmed with a neutral tone. Oh. Good, the girl replied shyly. Naruto rose an eyebrow. What can I do for you? His voice might have contained a little bit of annoyance, and he didn't care to hide it. I know this sounds a little creepy, but I have been watching you for a week now on your way home, and you seem very nice, she started, nervously rubbing her thumbs together, while keeping her gaze fixed to the floor. She paused a moment, seeming to work up some courage, before she looked Naruto in his eyes with a serious expression. I want you to be my boyfriend, she exclaimed with all the strength she could muster. Naruto mustered her suspiciously. Ha ha ha, this is not happening, is it? There he was thinking about maybe trying and start his own life, about maybe finding a girl who would like him, and suddenly there appeared one out of thin air. It was almost hilarious. There was still a hurting hole inside of him, again poking his ribcage from the inside. A hole left all those years ago by her, before she was taken from him. And that emptiness inside of Naruto was now pleading him to give in to his urge of not being alone anymore, pushing him to say yes. And for the fraction of a second he thought about it. He opened his mouth to speak. No, he replied, turning away from her. His rational half won once again. What the hell was she thinking? He didn't even know her. He had never even seen her before today. Wait. I didn't mean right now. Just in general. Someday. Just give me a chance, that's all I ask for, the girl pleaded, but Naruto still didn't turn around, rubbing 2 fingers over the bridge of his nose. I don't even know your name, Naruto replied, still not moving. It's Yuma. Yuma Amano, the black-haired girl replied shyly. What a beautiful name. Naruto finally turned around to face her again. All right, he said with a sigh, if that's what it's going to take to get rid of her, fine. One date. One, he said, looking in her admittedly very beautiful violet eyes. The girl squealed in joy as she thanked him, overly happy, and wrote down her number on a piece of paper, asking him to call her soon. Naruto nodded before Yuma ran off, humming happily. Naruto felt a smile creep over his lips, but he crushed it immediately. Holy Lord, what did he get himself into? // 3 days later, around the same time of the day he met her, possibly a little later, Naruto found himself at the park with Yuma. They had spent the whole day on their rather mainstream date. Naruto had no idea how to go on a date in this century, so he just looked it up on the internet before they went, hoping it would prepare him sufficiently. Apparently it did. Yuma seemed to have lots of fun. She was a terribly sweet girl, and Naruto could not help but think that she deserved better than him anyway. He tried to keep a distance between them, but it was useless. Yuma came closer and closer until she basically snuggled up to him while they were walking through town, and even closer once they entered the park. She smelled nice, and Naruto had to admit, it felt good to have someone who likes you so close. But it didn't matter. That was all the closeness he could allow, and he would end it at the end of their date. Not only for his, but mostly for her sake. He would only hurt her. You had your share of normal life today. See it this way, mate, at least you don't have put Rias through this. Naruto frowned. For the whole day he had spent with Yuma, he could not help but imagine what a date with Rias would look like. Hell, he was losing his punch. He was trained to kill people, not befriend them. Say, honey, Yuma began. She had started calling him honey sometime today, and even though he told her to stop it, she kept going. Actually, it sounded really nice to his ears, but then again, it was impossible. Do you like me? She asked. Naruto cleared his throat. The time to tell her was as good as any other. He just tried to come up with a way of telling her without breaking her heart. He wasn't good at this. Normally, he never cared what words did to someone he talked to, because most of the time Naruto had already killed the person he was talking to. He always stayed behind, to be there, as the last bit of life fading away from his target. No one should die alone, leaving someone, even if it was a target. To die by oneself was very dishonorable. He would not want to die alone either. This time was different. He needed to consider his words carefully. Yuma, listen, you are a very nice girl, and... Yuma stopped him from talking further as she stepped in front of him, also halting his movement. She hugged him tightly, her bust pressing to his chest. She stretched herself up to reach his ear, and Naruto once again noticed how good she smelled. Would you die for me? Yuma whispered in his ear, before letting go of him. It took him a second longer than he liked for realization to dawn on him, as the sweet girl in front of him transformed into a grown, still drop-dead gorgeous, but deadly-looking woman with a kick-ass pair of black feathered wings. He immediately noticed her. His target. The girl he had been sent to eliminate a couple of weeks ago. Great. Naruto had all his combat gear left at home. He didn't think that Yuma would be. Reiner, he growled, narrowing his eyes. Well, mistakes were made. Oh, you know me already, she smiled, while summoning a light spear and launching herself into the air with her black wings. So we can jump over the whole boring introduction part, assassin, she laughed. If I'd known you and Yuma were the same person, I'd brought my katana and sliced you into pieces, Naruto growled. He never made mistakes. Never. At least not during missions where he could just fuck stuff up like he pleased. But he got bested by this fallen angel after only a week of undercover crap. He had told his superiors that this wasn't a job for him, but they insisted. Stupid bunch of morons. In the end, he was the one to pay the price for their incompetence. Yes, we both know you would have. But that's why I set you up like this. So you couldn't bring it with you. And with these words, Reiner tossed the spear at Naruto, piercing through his chest. Naruto knew it wouldn't have been of any use to dodge. He might have been able to evade one or two of her blows without his gear, but in the end he would have died exhausted. He did this long enough to know when to struggle and when to give up. In the end, it was his own fault for not being prepared. He had lost and accepted it. I had lost before I even began, finally. Maybe I'll see her again. Looking down on himself, Naruto saw that light red glowing lance standing out of body. He could feel the cold feeling through his body. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt at all. It was just there, somehow. And Naruto was aware of life fading away from him. You know, Naruto coughed up blood, barely able to stand at this point, but still trying. I am not made for this pretending shit. Oh, I know. I am sorry, but that's why we requested you to kill me, Reiner replied, landing gracefully on Naruto's side, taking him gently her arms and slowly guiding him to the floor, so he didn't fall. He slowly shook his head. So everything was a setup all along? It made sense. A good plan, he presumed. Rhaenyra held the feared assassin in her arms so he wouldn't die alone. There was some honor between warriors, after all, and no one wants to die alone. She certainly wouldn't. To be honest, I would have liked to fight you fairly. But I guess we both had our orders, she continued, her voice surprisingly soft. I guess. He coughed weakly. For what it's worth. I enjoyed the date. Thank you. Honey. Rhaenyra smiled genuinely at Naruto, whose lips twitched before his eyes closed. He could have sworn she looked sad. As his vision got blurry and he felt his eyelids get heavy, Naruto saw how Rhaenyra's hair turned light purple for a second before becoming bright red, her violet eyes soon were blue, and before he knew what was going on, he saw Rias holding him. His vision sharpened up one last time, before he fell into eternal darkness. The fallen angel let the spear vanish with a wave of her hand, before she folded Naruto's arms over his chest and placed him on the floor. Rest in peace, warrior. Rhaenyra said softly before getting up. She felt so bad for this. Naruto was a good guy, he had been nice to her, even when she could easily tell how uncomfortable he was. It was a shame. He seemed like a decent guy. And he was really good looking too. With a last look back at the deceased assassin, the fallen angel took off. She had done her job, if she liked it or not didn't matter. If the choice would have been up to her, she would not have killed him. // Far away, Rias was feeling a strong magical pull, tearing her away to an unknown location. It was long ago that she was personally summoned by someone, and it was even longer ago that the drive to appear there was this strong. Something was not right. Aquino! Rias exclaimed. A moment later her queen came into the room. Yes, President, she said calmly. Come with me, the crimson-haired princess said as she took Aquino's hand and summoned a transportation circle. Where to? The priestess of thunder asked, confused. No idea was the only thing Rias replied before dragging her best friend Trough the circle to the other side. // When Rias stepped out of the transportation circle, she saw someone lying on the floor, obviously dead. Even before she realized it was Naruto who laid slain on the ground, she noticed the amount of blood which was basically everywhere. Naruto! Rias exclaimed, hurrying over to the corpse, Aquino in tow. The black-haired girl placed her hand on his chest, only to frown heavily. What was this? What's wrong, Aquino? Is he dead? Rias asked, clearly tense like never before. This is strange, Aquino stated, confused, only to get a really unsatisfied look from Rias. What is strange? Talk to me, Aquino, the Crimson Princess demanded. He has no heartbeat, but there is life in him. I have no idea how this is possible, but he is dead, though alive at the same time. It feels really strange. She tried to explain what she was feeling, but couldn't put it in words the way she'd like to. Can you heal him? Rias urged. Well, I am trying, Aquino shrugged, already deeply concentrated on the healing procedure. Do whatever you can, Aquino. Rias ordered. Her best friend's voice was panicking, which worried Aquino probably even more than the almost dead Naruto. A couple of minutes passed, while Aquino struggled for Naruto's life, but no matter how hard she tried, it was slowly slipping through her fingers like dry sand. It felt as if there simply was no life there to save. President, I am losing him. There is nothing I can do, Aquino said silently. She didn't possess the power to heal these injuries of his, and she most certainly didn't possess the power to pull his soul back to the living. If you really want to save him, there is only one thing I know you can do. But as your queen, I have to tell you, it is not the wisest of action to reincarnate an ordinary human. He isn't special. Rias shook her head. No, he is special. I know it. Something is special about him, she stated, almost a little too convinced. I will support whatever decision you make, President. But let me urge you to decide fast. Akino said. Naruto was slipping away. Ria seemed to know what to do, as she stood up to release some of her demonic aura in a whirlwind of red and black light. She spread her arms out over Naruto and spoke the ancient words. In my name, Rias of House Grimory, I order you, Naruto Uzumaki. I command your soul to come forth from the netherworld. I resurrect you back to this soil as one of my devils. You, my brave warrior, come forth from the shadows, come forth with new life and purpose into my peerage. Ria's words left her lips, before Naruto's chest began to glow and one very strange-looking chess piece appeared. It was no regular piece, but clearly a mutation piece, one which looked like the combination between lots of other different pieces. There was definitely a knight mixed with a bishop and a rook, but the figure sitting on a horse also had a crown on its head. Rias gasped in shock, as did Akino. There was no way this should even be possible. What was this boy to create such a mutation piece? Rias couldn't wait until he woke up so she could ask him, because whatever he was, he had to be really powerful. The evil piece began to glow an unnatural bright red, before they sunk back into the chest of Naruto. He is still badly injured, Akino said plainly. I know. Thank you, Akino. I'll take care of him now, the Crimson Princess said. Akino bowed to her and left through a magic circle. / Ria slid Naruto down on her own bed. She originally wanted to take him to his place, before she remembered that she had absolutely no idea where he was living. So, lacking other options, she teleported to her place. It was a nice, but rather small flat in one of the better residential areas in Kuo. She was living alone after all, and to be honest, Rias was not here all that often, so a huge apartment made really no sense. Rias liked her little haven though. She went to great effort decorating the place with various different things, most of them being of Japanese background. The most proud she was of her shelf full of first edition mangas. Though she would never admit it aloud, the collection was her treasure. She gently placed an unconscious Naruto on her soft bed, before beginning to undress him. Her healing method required two things: time and skin contact. The more the better, which was valid for both aspects. She tore off his jacket, before she moved to unbutton the badly blood-stained white shirt. Tugging at the last piece, which was stuffed into his trousers, Rias peeled it off him. The soaked fabric clung to his defined form, revealing his muscular upper body. Rias tossed the cloth aside, before she froze, almost turned to stone. She blinked rapidly, taking in the absolutely unexpected sight in front of her. What happened to you? She gasped to herself, as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. She couldn't believe her own eyes. Naruto had only one arm. At least only one real arm, which was his left. His right arm was from the shoulder downward flat black and of rough honeycombed structure. It was obviously some form of synthetic composite material, and incorporated some elliptical silver metallic parts which stood out a little bit from the rest of his arm. Naruto's elbow was also supported by the brushed silver metal, also some lines along the connection the arm had with the shoulder. It clearly was an artificial arm crafted using highly advanced cybernetics. Rias had read about the theoretical possibility of cybernetics in a magazine the Academy's library had, but she didn't know it was already applicable. Only Naruto's hand seemed perfectly natural, obviously the result of accurate adjustments so it wouldn't attract unwanted attention. As Rias stared longer, she noticed the arm spread fine tubes into Naruto's chest from his shoulder downward. Could it be that even more of his body was artificial? Rias had to force herself not to stare any longer. She had to save his life. It wouldn't be saved by staring at him. She unbuttoned his pants and tore them down, only to see two more cybernetic limbs. Both his legs were artificial, as well as one of his arms, made from the same dark black material. Rias pressed her hand to her mouth in shock. What happened to that poor man? What? It had something horrible and human to lose so many limbs. She swallowed hard. She could only begin to imagine how much this must hurt. Poor Naruto. You will be better soon. At least one of your sufferings I can take away from you. Rias gently tugged him under her sheets and removed his underpants, partly out of respect, but mostly because she honestly didn't want to know what else was replaced by synthetics. Looking at him hidden under the covers of her bed, he looked so peaceful, like he was asleep. Rias took a moment to admire him, while she began to strip down herself. Knowing she had already wasted enough time, she hurried out of her cloth, leaving them there where they fell. Once completely naked, she crawled over Naruto and slid under her blanket. His body radiated a comfortable warmth off, before Rias snuggled to the unconscious body of Naruto. She sighed, hoping he wouldn't freak out tomorrow. She became oddly aware of the soft contact his skin made with hers. It really turned her on more than it should have, but he felt so strong and unmovable. Like a rock you can hold onto in the harshest storms of the darkest nights. A rock you can trust would never move or suddenly be gone. Rias tried to shake the thoughts off her mind, concentrating instead on her healing magic. It didn't take long for her to fade into sleep, her healing powers slowly mending Naruto's wrecked body as good as possible. When he'd wake up, he shouldn't feel any pain from the light spear anymore. But his other injuries? Rias was sure she had not the power to rid him of those. // Naruto's eyes fluttered open, a blurry picture of an unfamiliar ceiling was what greeted him. He blinked the dizziness away and gave his eyes the moment to get used to the light. Yes, he was in a foreign room. He let his head turn to his right to see clothes spread all over the floor, a tidy desk with a laptop on it and a shelf full of mangas. The backsides of the books composed a picture of a girl lying on her side, while smiling at the spectator. Naruto tried to remember what happened, but his memory was completely blank. Strange, he thought to himself, as he turned his head to his left. He suddenly looked into the beautiful blue-green eyes of one gorgeous Rias Grimoire. Her face was almost touching his, as her head was resting on his shoulder. She smiled at him warmly. Good morning, she greeted, whispering, snuggling closer to him, clearly very comfortable with him around, as she pressed her ample breasts to his side. Naruto blinked and was suddenly made aware of a couple of things. He was naked. Rias was naked. They were in bed. He had no idea what happened. Clothes were basically everywhere. And they were currently in what had to be her room. He swallowed hard and tried to keep calm. Now was not the time for freaking out, but he felt so out of place. Naruto clearly remembered dying. He should not wake you next to a girl. He should not. Definitely not next to a naked girl, while being naked himself. What the hell happened? I have but 3 questions. And I will apologize in advance for their rude characteristics. Naruto spoke up calmly, ignoring Rias' greeting. The crimson-haired beauty kept smiling at him, I can imagine. Ask, she said sweetly, drawing a circle on his naked chest with the tip of her finger. Firstly, why are we naked? Secondly, what happened? And thirdly, where are we? He asked flatly. Rias couldn't help but giggle. He surely was very composed. She halfway expected him to jump out of bed while completely freaking out. On the other hand, she was not surprised by his calmness either. Not at all. Well, we slept together, obviously, Rias replied teasingly. That's why we are naked. Naruto rose an eyebrow at that, causing Rias to frown a little. What, you don't believe it? Sorry, but no. There is no way we would have slept together, Naruto replied, cold as ice. Rias pulled her head back a little, clearly offended. Or at least pretending to be. Oh. That was rude. Am I appalling to you? She asked and let the finger, which was formerly drawing soft circles, scratch over his chest. What? Naruto looked confused, and finally, there was a bit of insecurity in his voice. Of course not, he exclaimed fast. Damn, Rias was so hot he was sure a gay guy would still want to do her. You are absolutely beautiful, and I would never dare to even think about appalling things in your presence. It's just that I would never. There is. I mean. Rias giggled again. Relax, I was just teasing you. Nice to see that you are not always so icy, she smiled. But I will answer your questions truthfully now. It will sound like madness, but trust me, it's the complete truth. Naruto nodded slowly, curious of what would follow. He doubted Rias could tell him something more mad than his life already was. Yesterday you were attacked and killed by a fallen angel. You summoned me using a flyer my familiar was distributing in the city that day. So I found you lying on the floor, bleeding to death. Because I was unable to rescue you otherwise, I reincarnated you as a devil, she explained and made a short pause. Interestingly, Naruto didn't look confused at all. His visage was all stoic as he listened, so Rias continued, after I reincarnated you I took you to my place to heal your injuries. That's where we currently are. My healing method requires skin contact to properly work, as it is sharing auras. Doing it naked is the best way of healing severe injuries like yours. Don't worry, we didn't do it, I am still a virgin. Rias teased him and could have sworn his eyes lit up as she mentioned her purity, but he turned his head away immediately, looking up at the ceiling. So I am your devil now? He asked plainly after being silent for a few very long moments. Yes, she replied, and was wondering about his choice of words. Your devil? Why did he assume he was hers now? He was correct, of course, but how did he? So which of your evil pieces am I, ma'am? He asked. As usual, his voice was calm and lacked any emotion. Rias gasped at that. How do you know about that? She asked. Please answer my last question, ma'am. Then you can poke holes in me. Rias didn't quite understand. Where was this ma'am suddenly coming from? You created a mutation piece. I still don't know what it is exactly, but it looked like a chimera, a combination between knight, rook and bishop, she answered, blushing hard. She still wanted to know why he was powerful enough to create such an evil piece. It was really awkward to tell him this to his face, even when she left the part with the crown out. Naruto knew about the evil piece system. He surely knew what it must mean for a devil to provoke such a reaction from the evil piece system. Too powerful to be put in a category. Even the most powerful queens didn't create mutation pieces. The closest thing Rias knew of was Graphia, her brother's queen, who took besides the queen piece 5 more pawns. But even she didn't mutate a evil piece. Naruto did. And he created something, which should have been impossible. Damn, that had to mean something. Naruto started to laugh joyfully. It was the first time Rias heard him laugh, and it made her smile instantly. His laughter was the most genuine one she ever heard. Now you are just mocking me, ma'am, he replied, his voice now actually pretty lighthearted and nowhere near as serious as it used to be. I am not. Rias insisted. And what is it with that, ma'am, all of a sudden? Yes. You have answered my questions, ma'am, he said, so I shall answer yours. He cleared his throat before starting. I am not a simple student of Ko Academy, as I am sure you figured out by now. I was sent here to find and kill a fallen angel named Rainara. As you can see, I failed. It turned out the whole job was a trap set by the fallen angels. It was my first failure during a mission, and I am deeply ashamed for it. Hang on, job? Mission? Rias looked confused. Yes, Naruto nodded slowly. I am a hired gun, a mercenary, a professional killer. An assassin, if you want. It would suit my style the most, I suppose. And without wanting to sound boastful, I am the very best there is in this business. You can buy my service via the organization. We had the Holy Church as a customer a couple of times, so that's how I came into contact with the fallen angels and the devils. We also got quite a lot of contracts from you devils. It seems that sometimes a few of our assassins get hired for something you call raiding games. That's how I know about the evil peace system. But also simple assassinations of angels or fallen angels are rather common. Or devils, if the customer is a fallen angel, or the Holy Church. We do not differentiate. Service is sold to anyone willing to pay. Anyway, whatever reason you have to contact the organization, it all works like this. You say what you want, and they send you someone who is suited best for doing the job. You pay half the money you agreed on with the organization. The assassin, for example me, kills the person you want dead. He brings you the head of that person. You pay the other half. Should the assassin fail, the organization will send another one to accomplish the mission. Regular customers get to request assassins. They sometimes like working with someone they already have worked with in the past, because they like the person or their particular way of doing things. But in the end it does not matter. You pay and get someone who will kill whoever it is you want dead, no matter what, no questions asked, no strings attached. Naruto laughed. I am doing this for quite some time now, and the person who contracted me was always either sir or ma'am, he said. Even longer than quite some time. I have been doing this for lifetimes. But I'll have to wait with that a little bit. Maybe later. But I didn't. Rias looked at him, clearly trying to process what Naruto was telling her. This quiet boy? An assassin? It seemed like a bad joke, but on the other hand it would certainly explain his outstanding physique. The way I see it, you contracted me, ma'am. You don't pay money, but you contracted me. Without you I'd be dead, wouldn't I? Time is as good a payment as money. That makes you a ma'am, he smiled at her. Before getting out of bed, presenting Rias a good view of his behind. He looked like a young god, and now it suddenly made sense why his body was in such a good condition. He surely had to do lots of physically demanding things. She also was relieved that his artificial legs didn't reach up all the way to his waist, but instead stopped a bit over the middle of his thighs. But ma'am, I have to inform you that despite our contract, I do not offer cuddling as a service. I am a professional hitman after all. Rias blushed almost as red as her hair. Sorry. She muttered. Oh, I didn't mind. It was a long time ago that I could enjoy the warm sensation only a beautiful female can provide. But it would be highly unprofessional either way. He smiled at her. Holy hell, what was he talking about? Why did he suddenly feel so easy around Rias? Yesterday he was struggling with everything, and now? It was like it had been washed away. Maybe it was because he knew he would be stuck with her forever, and he really didn't want to push her away too harshly. He knew that he couldn't, and he also knew that he didn't want to anymore. He could use a friend again. A friend. He would allow nothing more than that. A friend he could risk having. After all, Rias was a devil. She wouldn't be taken away easily, like she was. The crimson-haired princess was most likely pretty strong herself, and now, after all those years, and after all the things he knew he could do, Naruto was sure he could protect her. Not like last time. There was nothing wrong with being friendly to his boss. But he needed to keep things at a level where it still was professional. The way I understand it, I am your servant now, am I not? He asked, after putting on his jeans. Rias just began crawling out of bed. She truly was mesmerizingly beautiful. Her skin was absolutely flawless, and she moved very gracefully. The morning sun was shining through the window, making her red hair almost glow. Yes, you are, she said, slipping into a white dressing gown, judging from the shimmer of it, made from silk. So you of course can use me as you please, and I shall comply to your very word, ma'am. I just asked to not let me perform tasks one could consider dishonorable or possibly shameful for a warrior. His voice had something humble to it, but he still sounded absolutely sincere. Rias smiled a little weakly at him. He basically just told her that he was not her sex toy, and he wanted her to keep her hands off him. She had to hide her disappointment. Rias would be lying if she'd say she wasn't attracted to him. though she had no idea what it was, but something about him pulled her towards him. It made her notice him in the schoolyard, it made her decide to reincarnate him as a devil, and it made her decide to heal him herself. She didn't know him much, true, but Rias somehow wanted to be close to him. And the only way she knew of to show him was physical contact. The crimson-haired beauty always showed affection through her body, because she never knew how to do it with words. And now, to be put off like this, it was a pretty painful blow. Well, she had just met him, and he didn't know anything about her. Maybe it was normal. Maybe if she gave him a little time, he would open up to her and realize her interest in him was legitimately because of him and not because he was technically hers. Maybe over time he'd allow her to be closer again. She would never use him, and certainly not like this. Of course, she said. Naruto immediately noticed the slight hurt tone in her voice, wondering if he overstepped his boundaries. Maybe he shouldn't have said anything. But he couldn't, as much as he wanted, he couldn't. The pain of losing someone he loved was something he never wanted to experience again. Never. And though he was certain that Rias could fend for herself, he was not ready. He didn't want an intimate relationship yet. Maybe he didn't want one ever again. Despite all that, Rias was still his boss now, wasn't she? His master? It would be stupid to give in to his desires. In the end, one of them would get hurt badly. Come, I'll fix you some breakfast. You must be starving. Rias spoke up, her voice returned to happy and cheerful, the slight hint of sadness was gone, almost bringing Naruto to think he might have imagined it altogether. // Before Naruto could reply anything, he found himself sitting at a comfortable table in a small eating kitchen with a neat plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. Rias was sitting across the table facing him, digging into her own eggs. Naruto had to force the meal down with all his concentration. With each bite, he could feel the pain and revolting feeling from his stomach, which was struggling against each small portion of food he forced down. It took everything he got to not throw up all over the table. Maybe you should have just told her, pal. Asking isn't a crime. You can't just eat this stuff and expect things to play out the way you want them to. You are a social coward, you know that? A voice in Naruto's head said, and he was about to mutter a silent no shit. For a moment after that, he thought he might actually be able to finish his plate, before a wave of pain and the overwhelming urge to throw up overcame him. Excuse me, he pressed out, holding an arm over his stomach, ma'am, causing Rias to look up. Naruto's face was completely white and some veins were standing forth, painting faint blue lines over his face. He barely managed to stay on his feet as he held onto the kitchen table before falling towards the bathroom. He crashed into a wall and stumbled, but miraculously managed to not fall over as he basically crashed into the small bathroom. Rias shot up and hurried after him. What was wrong with him? Did she accidentally poison him? Yes, it had been a while since she cooked herself, but honestly, no one could possibly screw scrambled eggs UPS this much, right? Right? She arrived at the doorframe of her bathroom to see Naruto ungracefully cowering on the floor, while hanging over to the toilet. The sound of violent puking filled the room. Rias had a look of worry written all over her face, as she had to see his whole body twitching and jerking as if he was being electrocuted. It looked like he was in horrible pain. And he was. Oh dear. Rias exclaimed, I am so sorry, she said, hurrying over to him and holding him while he kept throwing up. She tried calming him down by rubbing gentle circles over his back, but he kept puking violently. Rias had no idea how scrambled eggs could possibly provoke such a reaction, and she wondered if maybe his injury was not as well healed as she thought, when the crimson-haired princess caught a glimpse on the toilet's content. She felt shock strike into every fiber of her body when she had to see it was filled with a dark red liquid. Blood. Naruto was puking up blood. Naruto, she asked with a shaky voice, talk to me, what is wrong with you? How can I help you? She wanted to know, holding him tightly, but Naruto couldn't answer. His puking turned into a suffocating coughing before Rias gently reached for his shoulder. She pulled him back from the toilet into her lap as he kept coughing. With the expression of horror clearly present all over her beautiful visage, she laid her eyes upon his face and couldn't help but gasp in shock. She felt her blood freeze in her veins as realization struck her like a truck at full speed. "Naruto," she panted, stroking a shaky finger over his pale cheek, "are you?" Rias couldn't get the word out, but Naruto seemed to understand. "Yes," he coughed again, his body still twitching violently as Rias held him close. She looked at him in deep worry. His formerly blue iris had turned into a purplish red, the surrounding eye was bloodshot to a point where it almost seemed black. His skin started to crumble as if it was made from thin and dry paper as he gasped for air with his mouth wide open. Rias had a perfect view on his unnatural long fangs, which surely were not this long just a few minutes ago. "You idiot," she gasped with shaky voice. "Why didn't you tell me? Damn, and I gave you a plate of eggs. Why did you eat it? Do you want to die?" Rias cried as she tried to reach for a little bag sitting on the porcelain sink nearby. She barely reached it with the tip of her fingers without having to stand up. Hasty, she grabbed through its contents with shaking hands, carelessly throwing away all the things she didn't need right now until she finally found what she was looking for. A pair of small, golden manicure scissors. Without hesitation, she dragged the pointy end over her palm. The thick liquid, which bore so close resemblance to the color of her hair, gushed out of it like a gentle spring. She immediately held her hand over Naruto's mouth as the first drops of warm blood dropped down onto his lips. "I hate you right now, you know that? How was I supposed to know you are a vampire? This is the kind of stuff you tell your master. I have to take care of your well-being. How am I supposed to do this when I don't know everything about you? I could have killed you, damn it." She was rambling now just to keep her mind occupied while she fed Naruto her blood. After a couple of drops, his eyes began returning to their normal color, his skin regained some color, and his fangs slowly retracted to normal length. With some strength returning to his body, he weakly reached up to Ria's hand, pressing it so his mouth. Her hands were soft and the blood wonderfully warm. The sweet juice of life was spreading in his mouth, and he felt alive again. This was the first time he tasted human blood in decades. He almost forgot how it tasted, but he was sure that Rias' blood tasted especially good. Rias tried to calm him down, letting him suck blood from her one hand, while gently stroking through his dark black hair with the other. "Take your time," she said softly. "I have enough for you." She smiled at him. Damn, she had no idea how long it must have been since he drank the last time. The thought crossed her mind that she didn't know a thing about vampires other than need for blood. How long could they go without it? Rias wrote it down on a rapidly growing, though still imaginary list of things she needed to ask him. After 2 or 3 more gulps, he let go of her hand and she gently wiped away the trail of blood from his chin before wrapping her hand into a towel. Naruto breathed heavily. He felt like the moment after waking up from a night of heavy drinking and excessive sleep deprivation, but with the sensation of that massive hangover rapidly fading away. A warm sensation was spreading over his body as Rias' blood slowly gave him back life. "I apologize," he said weakly. "I should have told you, but..." Rias replied again, "It's okay. No reason to be sorry. Now I know." "It's okay," she smiled at him. "I understand now why your eyes lit up like they did when I mentioned I still am a virgin." She giggled cutely, almost a little embarrassed. "Is it that much more tasty?" she asked, both trying to lighten up the mood as well as satisfying her own curiosity. Naruto shook his head. "Not only this. A single drop of virgin blood can do what a whole body of someone impure couldn't," he replied, leaving out the majority of his motivation and secrets for doing it. Rias would learn when she was ready for it. These things cannot be hurried. "I am sure you will explain in time," Rias said with a supportive smile. Until then, whenever you are thirsty, you know where to find me. That certainly came rather unexpected for Naruto. Very unexpected. He wasn't sure if Rias was aware of all the consequences this offer came with. I can survive from animals, he stated. That doesn't sound like it would be particularly enjoyable, Rias noted with a smile. She still held Naruto close. I won't have one of my servants survive. I want them to live. Naruto's eyes drifted away for a moment. She sounded so serious about this, it reminded him of long-gone friends who took care of this kind of need in the past. Thank you, ma'am, he said. Suddenly the way he pronounced ma'am sounded a lot like kiddo. Rias couldn't help but smile even wider. He had something terribly cute. Of course, she whispered in his ear. // All right, everyone, I want to introduce you to our newest member, Rias announced in front of the Occult Research Club. This is Naruto Uzumaki. He didn't take an evil piece from me, but added a mutation piece, which looks like a knight, rook, and bishop fusion. Rias said with a forced serious expression on her face. She still couldn't believe what happened. Hello, everyone, Naruto greeted with a little insecure smile. Damn, he still didn't like people, and even if they all were devils, he didn't care. He was no team player. He was a lone wolf, always had been and probably always will be. He also felt clearly uncomfortable how everyone was looking at him. Naruto, meet my peerage. Why don't you all introduce yourselves? Rias said, pointing at the group of people who were sitting on two couches around a tea table or standing. I am Kiba Yudo. I'm a knight as well, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, almost ridiculously handsome boy greeted. Naruto guessed he was probably in his second year of Ko Academy because he really looked rather young. But he was sure Kiba was the main source for girls swooning whenever he talked to them. Naruto felt the corner of his lips twitch upward a little at the thought. Nice to meet you, the boy added with a nod, which Naruto returned. I'm Kaneko Tuju, a bored voice of a small girl on the opposite couch said. She had white hair and golden eyes. Naruto guessed her to be about 12 years of age, but you never could tell with devils. She could have been hundreds of years old. I'm a rook, also like you, I guess, she shrugged, like she actually didn't care at all. Leave me alone and we'll get along perfectly, she said plainly. Naruto felt himself smile. Well, at least she spoke her mind. Leaving her alone shouldn't be a problem at all. She was a little girl, there was nothing he could possibly want or need from her. Kaneko, be nice to our new family member, a new voice said. It belonged to the raven-haired beauty standing behind Rias. Her black hair was tied up in a ponytail and swung down almost to the ground, with two strands standing out on the top. She had yellow ribbons in her hair and truly beautiful, violet eyes. She seemed very calm and kind on her outside, radiating confidence off, almost like Rias. Whatever, Kaneko shrugged, reaching for one of the cookies lying on a plate in the middle of the table. I apologize for our rook, the young woman said, and bowed slightly. If I may introduce myself, I am Akino Himejima, the queen of Lady Grimmery. It's a pleasure to meet you, she said as she walked over to Naruto and bowed once again. It's really interesting you created such a strange mutation piece. I never heard of something like this happening. You must be really powerful with that. Akino spoke out what everyone else was thinking. It should not have been possible for a normal person to create such a mutation piece, but yet here this Naruto guy was doing exactly that. The Priestess of Thunder was curious to see what he could do with the power he undeniably possessed. She smiled at him as she again came closer, definitely violating his private space. I look forward to seeing you in action, she purred. Akino is quite the sadist, Rias explained with a light-hearted shrug, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Naruto shot her a confused look. She gets off on other people's pain, Rias explained further. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at that a little. Pain was something he could easily bestow anyone with. It was what he did for centuries. Well, you sure are going to have fun with me, he said with a teasing smile. He had no idea how, but somehow when people accidentally pressed the right buttons of Naruto, the easygoing, laid-back and confident Naruto took over for the reserved one, who was usually responsible for conversation. At least for conversation with anyone who was no customer of the organization. Was that it? Was he getting more comfortable here because he was contracted? Maybe. He would figure it out later. Well, I look forward to it. Akino got even closer to him as she inhaled deeply. My, you already smell like blood, she whispered, and had a light blush on her cheeks. Naruto inhaled sharply. There should have been no way she could smell that. He was completely caught off guard and couldn't reply. He barely managed to suppress the reflex to reach up to his lips, checking if he had some blood left on them. Luckily, Ria stepped in for him. He couldn't change all of his clothes since yesterday. There's probably still blood on them. Don't worry, he didn't kill anyone on his way to school, though he did have my blood all over his face this morning. She thought to herself. Too bad. Akino giggled as she stepped back and Naruto released the breath he was holding. After Rias fed him in her bathroom, thus knowing about his true nature, he had asked her to keep it a secret. Though this wasn't always the case at all, the new devil didn't like this part of his personality himself. Once he was a proud and confident vampire, but that was in the past. Now he felt really uncomfortable with this side of himself. Even Rias knowing was strange, yet bearable. But everyone else, he couldn't take it. Rias agreed, as she saw how ashamed he was and how uncomfortably he shifted from one leg to the other as he asked her to keep it a secret. Rias promised she wouldn't say a word, and so, no one knew of his bloodsucking needs so far. Luckily, the president seemed to deal just fine with his condition, and Naruto was very grateful for it. She didn't judge him for it at all. Hell, she had even offered to feed him whenever he had to satisfy his thirst. This was an incredible gesture, one that secured her Naruto's unwavering loyalty without her even knowing. He had gone way too long without drinking before today. Maybe if he'd given in to his more animalic needs, he would have regenerated from Rainer's light spear on his own. He most likely would have. But if he had, then he would not be here now, would he? Was this a good thing? Naruto would have to wait and see. They also kept his former occupation to themselves, thinking it would be best if no one knew for now. At least until everyone got used to him. He used to be a hired gun after all, and Rias could imagine that mostly Kiba and Akino wouldn't trust a mercenary at all. She wanted to make things easier for all of them. One day when Naruto would have settled in, she'd fill everyone in on his previous occupation. Alright everyone, I guess that covers the important things for today. So let's have a little welcome party for Naruto, shall we? Rias suggested. I'll get some tea, Kaneko stated as she got up and left. Naruto rose an eyebrow at Rias, who formed a silent relax to him. For Chapter 2. 2 days later, after another club meeting. Alright everyone. That's it for today, you all may go home now. Naruto, I need to talk to you. Rias dismissed everyone. Kaneko and Kiba got up and left the clubroom without further ado, but Akino stayed behind. She always stayed as long as the president, no matter what, so no one thought about it twice. Naruto waited for the door to be closed before he turned around facing Rias, who was sitting behind her desk in her comfy chair. She looked like she plotted something, and Naruto chose not to comment on it. He'd probably see soon enough. What can I do for you, ma'am? Naruto asked politely, but with a clear military drill accent. That slight undertone of making the title he gave her sound like kiddo was gone. Shame, Rias thought I really liked how it sounded. Akino is a little busy this evening. Would you be a dear and take care of one of her customers? Rias asked with a smile. Akino wasn't busy, but the president wanted to see how Naruto could handle the jobs of a devil. Naruto glanced at Rias, then at Akino, only for his sight to return to the president. They both wore that smile on their lips, as if it was a test. Ah, well. He should have thought so. Rios had all right to test his skills. He would not disappoint. One time he failed, and he would never fail again. Ever. He swore it to himself. Yes, ma'am, he replied sharply. Excellent, here is the address. Rios handed him a piece of paper, which he quickly inspected, before hiding it in the inner pocket of his jacket. Say hello to him for me. Akino giggled and Naruto nodded. May I go home and refresh myself first? He asked. Of course, Rios replied with a charming smile on her lips. Naruto was rapidly growing on her to an extent which she didn't yet want to acknowledge. Ma'am, he gave her a proper salute, before vanishing in a dark black cloud and with a distinct plop. What was that? Akino gasped. There was no transportation circle, she stated, dumbstruck. No, it was not. Rios replied, sounding rather collected. She knew a little more about Naruto than Akino did. The crimson-haired ruined princess had been asking him questions after he regained his strength on the morning a few days ago, and he was fully justifying himself to her. While they sat on her couch with some tea, which only Rios could enjoy, she learned a lot about him and how his kind worked. For example, that he was able to survive daylight because he was turned into a vampire and not born as one. She also learned of the secret behind drinking a virgin's blood. Or at least about some of them. She was sure he kept something hidden from her, but didn't want to press him. Rios could see how uncomfortable she made him, so she stuck to the necessary questions. Naruto was a vampire, and being one, he had some skills other devils did not have. Teleportation being one. It had its pros and cons. The biggest con was that teleportation didn't work to every location. Naruto could only teleport to 2 locations. His coffin, which was stored for him in the basement of the hotel he was currently staying at, and after drinking from her blood, he also could come to Rios, should she ever need him, one of the things he could only do, because she was still pure at the time he tasted her blood. It might sound inferior to a transportation circle, but it had its advantages. Teleportation was unstoppable. Because it was ancient blood magic, no barrier or shield could stop him. He could always teleport, no matter the circumstances, distance, or obstacles. He didn't even have to know where she was to do it. Rios had asked him why he didn't teleport back to the hotel when Renner attacked him. He just replied, it wouldn't have been honorable, like the answer would explain everything. Rios had the feeling there was more to it than that, but again, didn't ask any further. Naruto certainly was one of a kind. Why do I get the feeling that I am left out on something? Akino asked a little offended. All in due time, my friend, Rios replied with an apologetic smile on her lips. Trust me. // Naruto was in his hotel room. He should start looking for apartments soon, because how things were currently looking, he certainly wouldn't leave Japan in a while. Maybe never. Well, there are worse places to be stuck in. Like the so-called Republic of Congo. Oh, I don't even want to think back to that shithole. Naruto shook himself away from the thoughts. It was the job he did before coming to Japan, and it was really, really dirty. Not the kill that was a clean headshot from very, very far away, but the country. When he came back, he had the urge to shower for 2 hours straight and still felt like there was shit left sticking to his body after that. That was so incredibly disgusting. No, Japan was a great country, he couldn't complain at all. Still, the hotel would surely only suffice so long. Even if it was the 4 seasons. An apartment certainly would be needed. Maybe even a small house. He didn't have all of his gear with him, and he would definitely need it to be of any use for Rios. Also, it would help him prepare, because he could actually spread out, not worrying about a mate suddenly busting his weapon stash. The more he thought about it, the more the house idea got attractive. No curious neighbors, working late in the night without waking anyone up. A house it was. Naruto made a mental note to go and buy one later. Money was no issue to him. Firstly, because the organization paid very handsomely, and secondly, because he was saving money for centuries. No, he had no financial worries whatsoever, to a point where he'd even consider himself stupidly rich. Reaching under his bed and retrieving a large black suitcase form there, Naruto pressed his hand on the shiny surface before the seal sprung open. The suitcase would only open if it was his hand touching it, not the hand of someone else. Inside the case there were multiple different weapons, from guns to pistols over knives, and also a neatly stacked pile of plates for a set of armor. It was what was known in the organization as the Phantom Armor. A cloaking device which rendered the operative indivisible for prolonged periods of time. Its usage was very tricky and required long training, which was why not many assassins of the organization could operate one. Naruto could be, and always was, very proud of it. He carefully took all the pieces out of the case and spread them over his bed. He changed into a bodysuit before he began to attach each part of the pretty heavy armor to his body. It was made of a bluish-black material. Heavy plates made of composite alloys protected all the vital parts of his body and also acted as emitter for the cloak. 2 plates were hanging down from his back, almost like a trench coat made from armor parts, covering his upper thighs from behind. It might have seemed rather bulky, but was actually very comfortable to wear. Naruto was so used to it, he had no problem moving around like he was naked. It was a second skin. Pulling the mask over his head, he controlled if the phantom armor was working properly. All systems were running smoothly. Satisfied with this, the assassin got his katana out of its linen binding and let it slide into the scabbard on his back. This was one of his main weapons of choice, because it was silent and absolutely deadly. But in modern times, a sword alone just didn't cut it, pun indeed intended, anymore. He had to be prepared to take out enemies at longer distance. So Naruto reached into his suitcase again, where he pulled out 2 pistols. Ha, pistols. Hilarious. Hand cannons. He checked his weaponry before holstering the large hand-held guns. The base used to be a Desert Eagle, but Naruto made some modifications here and there, just to suit his style better. Still, the .Cal 50 platform was absolutely amazing, no doubt about it. Now it was also dead accurate, and for the caliber it used also pretty silent. Not like Soundless Silent, but you know. Your ears didn't fly off anymore. Naruto went over his mental checklist once again, confirming that he indeed had everything he needed for today. He had no idea what awaited him, but the satellite image he looked at earlier suggested a rather quiet residential area. Rias seemed to want to test his skills in being stealthy. It should pose no problem. Naruto turned to the window in his bedroom, which he opened, before vanishing through it. He was gone into the night outside, making his way to that person he should take care of. Oh, how he loved that euphemism. Take care of someone. Sure thing. He had no idea how often he heard that phrase. Whenever someone wasn't comfortable with ordering someone's death. Strange, I didn't take Rias for a girl with a lot of remorse over her own decisions. Later. He rang the doorbell and waited. A couple of seconds passed before there were footsteps and the sound of a lock being opened. Yes, a man asked as he opened the door. He didn't see anyone in front of the door and was immediately pissed off. Those stupid kids with their prank buzzing all time were killing him. Where the hell is Akino today? She never was unpunctual. Why today? Just as the man wanted to close the door again, a figure appeared right in front of him, manifesting itself from thin air. It certainly was not Akino, but the man was sure it had to be a devil. No one else could just appear out of nowhere. Hello, he asked, confused as he looked at the dark mask. Are you? He wanted to know if this devil was the replacement for Akino today, but was cut off by Naruto. Do you happen to know a certain Akino Himejima? Naruto asked, his voice cold as ice. He only needed a fraction of a second to confirm the man indeed was the guy Rias talked about earlier, check his surroundings, and decide on a way to proceed for each outcome of his answer. Sure, I am waiting for her to finally show up. I have an appointment, the target replied, confused. She sends her regards, Naruto replied, reaching for something on his back. // How do you think Naruto is doing? Akino wanted to know. Rias shrugged. He is powerful, that much is for sure. But I have no idea about his social skills. I've spent some time with him over the last couple of days, which was quite the experience. I guess we will have to wait and see. But I don't expect him to find a regular today. He is filling in for you after all. So you did notice how he is either completely reluctant to speak or totally open and straightforward. It's really cute, Akino smiled. You tell me about it. You should have seen him wake up in the morning after, it happened. Rias laughed at the pleasant memory. Oh my, did he scream and jump out of bed? Akino asked, causing Rias to laugh out loud. No, quite the contrary. He opened his eyes and looked around in my room before he saw me. He looked at me, calmly stated he had 3 questions he would like to ask me, and apologized in advance for their possibly rude nature. His words, not mine. Rias grinned as she thought back. He then proceeded to ask where he was, why we had been naked, and what had happened. Completely calm and collected. Like he is used to waking up with a naked girl at his side, Rias laughed. Well, maybe he is, Akino replied. We can't really know, can we? She asked. Somehow this thought upset Rias more than it should have. She knew how old he really was. For sure he had enjoyed the company of many women, most of them would be dead for centuries by now. The reasonable side in Rias explained it to her, but the emotional side was still upset. She wanted to be something special to him. Damn, the last couple of days were torture and sweet heaven all at the same time to her. He had something which drew Rias to him, though she had no idea what it was. I like how he isn't one to talk when he has got nothing to say. There are so many talkers out there, it's so annoying. But he isn't like that at all. I like his collected, composed nature, Rias said, a little bit out of context. It seems like it isn't the only thing you like about him, Akino teased, and saw her friend turning red on her cheeks. Oh, this is gold. She wasn't like this in forever. Actually, was she ever like this, when it concerned a boy? Akino giggled at the sight of her mistress, so obviously holding a torch for the new guy. My. Someone is crushing hard, she teased, causing Rias to turn even redder. Oh please, like you didn't check him out. I saw how you looked at him before. You are no different. Never denied that. Akino giggled, before another quite distinguishable plop interrupted their conversation as it was about to get interesting. Naruto stepped out of a cloud of black smoke back into the clubroom. He was wearing a truly kick-ass armor, which had fresh blood splattered all over its front side. He tore the mask off his face and attached it to his belt. His black hair flopped out and he wiped it away. Back so soon? Rias asked, not noticing the blood immediately. She smiled at him, curious what he had to say. Ma'am, he said, giving her a salute. Mission was a success. Target was successfully disposed of. I allowed myself to place evidence pointing towards the neighbors, he reported. Sorry, I know I owe you a head, but I had to leave it at the objective so the fake evidence would work. Rias now saw the blood and had to gulp heavily. There was a very long, awkward moment of silence. What did you do? She forced herself to ask, not wanting to know at all. Death by lethal blow to the heart, he replied, as if he just ordered a salami pizza. You killed the client? Rias gasped, standing up. She didn't raise her voice, but it was clear she was upset. Naruto rose an eyebrow. Why, of course I killed him. Why are so upset? Your orders, my hands, ma'am. I did not order you to kill him, Naruto, she replied firmly, her voice now slightly louder than usual. The assassin blinked, confused, looking at Akino for help, but she didn't even move, being turned to stone. But, you said I should take care of him, did you not? Naruto didn't understand the world anymore. Of course I said that. In the sense of sitting down with him, chatting, playing some games, having tea. Not in the sense of getting rid of him. How could you kill a client? Why? She sat back down on her chair, at a complete loss. Where did she go wrong? What happened? Why did he kill the customer? Rias didn't understand. Ma'am, Naruto exclaimed. He had to explain himself now, or he feared he would lose Rias' trust. He completely ignored Akino was still here. You sent a trained assassin to someone saying to take care of that person. In my business, when you point a finger at someone saying these words, you want the person on the other end of your finger gone. Dead. Annihilated. That's the more or less polite phrase we use for just kill the target, no one cares how, just do it, possibly now when we actually don't want to say it so explicitly. It sure as hell does not mean to drink tea. I never heard it used this way. What were you expecting? He was really upset now himself, the more he thought about it. Not so much about her, but about himself, he should have known. Rias never worked with an assassin, there was no way she could have known. She was just a girl, a devil, true, but still a girl. How should she have known about the hitman slang? Naruto wanted to punch himself. Assassin? I am confused now, Akino interposed, looking back and forth between Naruto and Rias. She had overcome her initial state of shock and regained her ability to speak. I am an idiot, Rias muttered, sounding beaten. She let her head sink to the cool wooden surface of the desk in front of her. A bloody idiot. My deepest apologies, ma'am. If I'd been aware of the nature of your task, I would have fulfilled it to your desire. Please forgive my wrongdoing. But also, please refrain using vocabulary which is clearly linked to the disposing of people, or specify the task more precisely. I promise it will never happen again. I will make sure to get it right in the future. Please forgive me. Naruto bowed deeply. Rias took her head off the table and sat up in her chair. No, it's my fault, really. You are absolutely right. I should have made myself clear. I knew what you were and didn't think before sending you somewhere. I am the one who has to apologize, Naruto, she said. Naruto was right. She pointed the finger at someone and sent an assassin to him. She should have known this would happen. You don't send a mail bomb to someone either, expecting it to cook dinner for the recipient. Would someone care to finally fill me in? Akino demanded. I am sorry, Akino, Rias replied. I didn't want to tell everyone yet, thinking it might help everyone getting to know and trust each other. She inhaled deeply, as Naruto let himself fall to the couch. This day was a disaster to him. Hell, the last days were a disaster altogether. He didn't blow a mission, ever. And now he screwed up 2 in a row. His luck seemed to have run out for good. Rias in the meantime spoke to Akino. Naruto is a professional assassin. A hitman. Eh? You are? Akino turned to Naruto, who was lying on the couch, his feet hanging over the armrest as he rubbed his hand over his face. He didn't look too happy about this at all. The best there is. I am ranked number 1 in the organization, he said, and sounded completely destroyed. Like a child who just found out Santa wasn't real. There was no pride in his voice. He saw in the corner of his eyes how Akino turned to Rias with an expression of betrayal, and Naruto suddenly realized that he most likely damaged their friendship badly. And he could damage it even further if he didn't spill it now. Yeah, this is not happening. And while we are in the business of telling secrets, there is another one, he stated. No. Rias interrupted Naruto, don't. You don't want to do this and you know it, she exclaimed. It doesn't matter. Your friendship with Aquino is way more important than my comfort zone, he said, and sat up on the couch. My real name is Arunos of Trevorus. I was born in 731 as first son of a blacksmith in the German city of Trier, in what is now Rhineland-Palatinate. Hence my last name nowadays. Uzumaki. It's a contorted form of the German expression for blacksmith. Anyway, I was born in the beginning of the Dark Age, but it still was a good life. Hard work, but good. My father made good money with the workshop and I was set to follow in my father's footsteps. Naruto inhaled sharply before continuing. That was until some nasty stuff I don't want to talk about happened in 748 and forced me to make some decisions. He basically rushed over this part before going on in a normal pace. I was turned into a vampire in 750 by the great master of all vampires. The no-life king himself. The great and unfortunately vanished Count of Transylvania. Dracula. I lived my life training under his instruction. He was my mentor, teacher, trainer, instructor, father figure, family. He taught me everything I needed to know, from the secrets of being a vampire to table manners. Almost everything I know, he taught me. For a very long time I stayed with him until he deemed me ready and completed my training in 1262. The Count used to be a very influential person and held diplomatic relationships to many powerful institutions of the time. He chose a path for me long before I finished my training. Naruto paused and smiled for a moment. It was true his path was chosen long before his training was completed. But it wasn't chosen solely by the Count. Naruto's future was decided in regard to his past. The student wouldn't have it any other way. At the time, the church was struggling with lots of demonic incidents and barely was able to stand its ground. The Count offered his help to the Apostolic See, suggesting me as a kind of bodyguard for the Pope, reassuring them no harm could ever come to him as long as I was around. The time was desperate and attempts to kill the Pope were frequent, so the church accepted the Count's offer. I left Transylvania and made my way to Vatican City, where I served His Holiness as his personal guard. Things were rather interesting, especially in the beginning. Vatican City, April 1263. Your Excellency, a servant asked as he humbly bowed to the Pope, who was sitting on his bright golden throne. Angelic seeming light was shining down on him from the round window in the cupola above the throne. The pompous throne room was flooded with light, shimmering over all those handcrafted ornaments, which were to be found basically everywhere. Pope Urban IV was wearing the magnificent robes of His Holiness, white with lots of golden adornments on the outside and crimson red on the inside. He had that divine look on his old face, which was held high due to the impressive tiara, the Pope's crown, on his head. Speak, he allowed the servant. His determined, stern voice was roaring through the large hall. The one, who shall not be named, has arrived, the servant stated humbly, causing the Pope to raise an eyebrow. He knew exactly who he was. Send him, and he commanded, curious of who would arrive. Urban IV was not really looking forward to this. He owed the Count of Transylvania a favor, which was the only reason he allowed his apprentice to even be here. Vampires were creatures of the night. They were evil and not to be trusted. But Urban was also no fool. There have been numerous attempts on his life, and his papal guard was up until now more lucky than anything else. If he wanted to live, he needed someone who actually could fight a devil or a demon. And in the end, the best weapon against a monster was another monster. Maybe that vampire would surprise him. They were rather complex creatures after all. Two large and heavy doors got pulled open by knights in shining white and golden armor. The papal palace guard was just as much about shining as it was about skilled fighters. The doors slid in half with a loud cracking, which echoed through the hall. The gate was not opened completely when another man entered the throne room. He walked in at a fast pace, the steps of his armored boots echoing loudly through the otherwise completely silent room. The light surrounding him was visibly darker than in the rest of the hall. It was just as he absorbed it somehow. He quickly walked up towards the throne of His Holiness, who was sitting a few stairs above the floor on a little pedestal covered in a crimson carpet. The guest had shoulder-length dark black hair, which might have been a little messy, and deep blue, icy eyes. The visitor was wearing an expensive set of black armor, almost as black as his hair, with a black cape, which reached almost down to the ground. Incorporated to the bottom right corner of the cape was the Transylvanian crest in a deep red color. The black chest piece had very sophisticated chasing engraved into it and clearly was very expensive. On his waist the unnamed guest carried an impressive two-handed sword on his belt, which had a large, dark red ruby incorporated at the end of its handle. Also, upon closer inspection, it became apparent that his armor indeed had some red detailing. The inside of his cape was almost the same red as the Pope's, and the inside of the chasing of his armored gloves and vambraces was also filled with dark red color. The figure looked very grim in his dark and rather mysterious getup. The look on his face was unsmiling and clearly radiated his no-nonsense attitude off. He was one for getting shit done, and it was clear form just looking at him. His left hand had a firm grasp of his sword's handle, while the right one was completely relaxed. He walked straight up to the Pope, before knelt down at the edge of the few stairs leading up. "I am the vampire Arunos of Trevorus, who was sent by my master to serve as your protector," he said, his voice dark and dangerous. "Stand," the Pope commanded, and made a movement with his hand, emphasizing his words. Arunos, or Naruto how he would be called later, got up to stand. "So the Count thought I need a special protector?" Urban inquired. He wanted to hear the vampire's thoughts. "That seems to be the case. I am merely a tool, sent to fulfill a duty," Naruto explained. His ulterior motives just so happened to align with his current task. "Which is why Dracula sent him here." "I see." The Pope mused. This was hardly the answer he imagined. Urban might as well get to the point. "Now tell me, vampire, why should I entrust you with my life?" he wanted to know. Naruto watched as the servant who led him to the throne room approached His Holiness, apparently to tell him something. Naruto smirked slightly. He wondered when that thing would make his move. Because whatever it was, humanity was no part of it. "That depends. Do you want to live?" Naruto returned. The Pope seemed to be a little upset by the vampire talking back to him, but chose to ignore it. Vampires were famous for being arrogant and proud. And both habits were a sin. "Of course I do," the Pope replied, as the servant was mere seconds away from him. Then two things happened at the same time. The servant suddenly transformed into an especially ugly dark green demon, who violently lashed out at the Pope with his disgusting paw. The paw with its long and sharp claws coming out of it would have almost hit the Pope and probably killed him immediately. At the exact same time Naruto rushed forward, drawing his sword. With a quick and fluent motion he cut the demon's disgusting arm off, before decapitating him on the spot. He appeared so fast, no one saw him even move. One moment he was still down in front of the throne, the next he was already between the demon and the Pope, slicing the attacker into bits. He kicked the demon away from His Holiness, so it would fall down the few steps leading up to his throne, where it crashed to the floor. Dark purple blood was bubbling out of its corpse, the severed head was slowly wobbling down the stairs. "In that case, Your Excellency, you should trust me," Naruto said with a serious expression, butting his sword back at its place. The Pope blinked a couple of times. He seemed rather composed for what just happened. Maybe realization has not yet struck him. "You saved my life," he stated. "That is the reason I am here, Your Excellency," Naruto replied. "I was assigned a task and I will fulfill it to the best of my abilities." "I see Urban 4. Replied flatly. "Thank you, vampire," he said, and could not really believe his own words. "It is my duty to protect you, Your Excellency." "No need to thank me," Naruto replied, and despite his humble words, still sounded proud. The Pope nodded before he got up. He would have never imagined that this vampire would actually save him, yet alone on the first day. Maybe he was wrong to think so badly of him, just because he was a creature of the night. A creature he now owed his life to. "I will personally show you to your quarters," he stated, before leading the way. Naruto was walking right next to him. "To be honest, I didn't imagine you to be like this," Urban said. "And exactly like what did you imagine me?" Naruto asked. He didn't have a lot of contact with humans over the last couple of 100 years, but knew that they were rather scared of vampires. Funny how many ridiculous rumors were going around. "I don't know. I always thought vampires would be wild beasts, driven by bloodlust. But you seem very honorable. In fact, more honorable than most of the sycophants I tend to meet. I like men of action, not of words." The Pope praised and looked at the vampire walking to his right. He had an upright posture and a one-sided, proud smirk on his lips. The Pope suddenly wondered how a multi-hundred-year-old being sees humans, who merely live around half a decade at most. He imagined it must be quite humorous to watch. "Well, we do have a beastly side to our nature, so your concerns are not totally in vain," Naruto stated. His voice suddenly lacked the proud undertone he had up until now. "You are referring to the drinking of blood, am I correct?" Urban wanted to know. As he approached the door, guarded by palace guards. They opened it for His Holiness, who was leading Naruto into the truly beautiful papal gardens. They were overflowing with flowers of all colors and forms, and a sweet scent was heavy in the spring air. As Naruto stepped outside, he pulled a large hood of his cloak over his head, shielding him from the sunshine. It didn't exactly do him harm, it was just very uncomfortable. Like little needles pinching his skin. "You are Naruto," confirmed, when he was sure they were out of earshot of the guards. "Drinking blood is an unpleasant necessity, I am afraid. I understand it has to be the blood of a virgin, in order to keep your strength," Urban continued. To be perfectly honest, he found vampires rather fascinating, though he had only read about them in books. And knew the things Count Dracula had told him in his letters. "The Count apparently already told you much," Naruto concluded, as he followed the Pope through the truly magnificent gardens. He wondered who cared for them, because there was not a single comb out of place. "Yes, he has. I also like to read a lot, you know," Urban replied with a smile. Reading made him happy. "But rest assured, I will find a way to fulfill these sinful desires in a way our Lord can consent to," the Pope promised, and Naruto could not help but wonder how that would work. It was drinking blood after all. The sheer nature of it seemed to contradict everything the church would ever consider pure. 2 days later, Naruto was sitting on the comfortable, large bed in his chambers. He was actually very surprised by them. They were rather luxurious and also kept in pretty dark colors. Naruto felt at ease here. The walls were held in black wood paneling, while the floor was dark brown. The windows had shutters installed to them, so a little bit of light could shimmer into the rooms of Naruto's chambers, but without being too bright. Naruto could walk in daylight, but it was uncomfortable to him nevertheless, so this detail came in very handy. He preferred darkness after all, and to be rid of that stinging feeling the sun caused, at least when he was in his rooms, was just a nice touch. It helped him relax, not that Naruto was one for relaxing a lot. He had a combined living and bedroom, with a large table with a couple of chairs around it and separate desk. To the right side of the room was his four-postered bed, which had dark red, slightly see-through curtains. They were currently half open, as Naruto was sitting on the large bed, waiting. He looked in the mirror, which covered large parts of the wall he was facing. In the mirror he could see the door leading to his own private bathroom, which was also quite luxurious. Urban told him he should wait here today, because he had figured something out so Naruto could drink. Now the vampire was sitting here. Damn, he was getting really hungry. Suddenly there was a soft knock on the door. "Come in," Naruto called, and for a moment nothing happened. The vampire almost got up to answer the door when it got opened from the outside. A very shy-looking, definitely scared nun tiptoed a few steps into the room, closing the door behind her. She looked like she was going to die, hugging herself with her arms tightly wrapped around her. Naruto swallowed hard. Damn, she was so young and also so very beautiful. But her large golden eyes looked terrified. She was standing very close to the wall, as if it would protect her from something, and Naruto suddenly realized that this nun was scared out of her mind because of him. It hurt a lot more than he thought it would. "What is your name, dear?" the vampire asked, causing the nun to shiver a little. The only thing she could see in this way too dark room was his outline, as it was leaning forward from his bed. Two very evil eyes were glaring at her. "I am Sister Elizabeth," she answered shyly. "Now then, Sister Elizabeth, what can I do for you?" Naruto asked and tried to sound as friendly as possible. "His Excellency sends me," the nun whispered as she looked around in the dark room. She carefully eyed the shadow sitting on his bed. His eyes had an evil, unnatural violet glow. All her instincts were shouting at her to grab her legs and run. But the Pope personally asked her to come here. He asked her to do this. Why she was selected, Elizabeth did not know. The Pope had told her that she had nothing to fear and she would conduct a great deed to the Holy Church. It was her whole motivation to agree in the first place, but she was scared anyway. "He told me that you are a vampire, and—" she continued silently. Naruto was raising an eyebrow. Where was she going with this? "I am," he replied, before he got up from his bed. He was even taller than she thought. The young nun cringed, terrified. "But you do not need to fear me. I will never do you any harm," he promised, as he walked up to his windows, reaching out to open some of the blinds. Bright light was suddenly flooding the room, much to Naruto's dismay. But he imagined the nun would feel more safe if she'd actually see things. "Better now?" he asked. The nun nodded fast, as she finally saw where she was. The room, though kept in dark colors, was very luxurious. There was a large sword sitting on a display stand below a mirror, and an expensive dark black armor was strapped to a display dummy. The man she was sent to was wearing a simple black shirt and leather pants. The vampire was actually pretty handsome and had a friendly smile on his lips. Maybe he wasn't all that scary. "Now, Elizabeth, what did His Excellency send you here for?" Naruto asked. The nun swallowed hard as she remembered the reason for her presence. "He said you need to drink blood. And you need a virgin for it," she forced herself to continue. "So he sent me to fulfill your desires," she said, before silently adding, mostly to herself, "Please be gentle." She averted her gaze in shame. She knew this had to be done. She knew it was important, which is why she was willing to do it. But it still crept her out to no end. Naruto had to blink a couple of times before his brain processed what was said. He heard even that whispered last part. That was what Urban had in mind. Holy hell, that man was more bold than Naruto imagined. He looked at Elizabeth, who was clearly panicking. "No," Naruto said. "I refuse to do that," he stated. The gaze of the nun immediately darted straight at him. She expected a lot, including violent rape, but to be turned down was surely no part of it. The voice of His Holiness was ringing in her ears, telling her how important this was. She could not allow to be sent away, no matter how much she actually wanted to be. "Why would you do that?" she gasped. Urban had told her what would happen to the vampire if he didn't drink. That he'd grow weak if he didn't drink. Elizabeth didn't want him to be weak. If he was weak, he could not protect the Pope. And that meant that sooner or later one of those disgusting demons would kill him. That was something Elizabeth could not allow to happen. Yes, she was scared of this. Yes, she would have liked it better if she didn't have to do this. But she didn't expect the vampire to turn her down, sending her away. He was not at all like she had expected him to be. She imagined he would eat her alive, doing all kinds of unimaginable sinful things with her. But he didn't. And Elizabeth wondered why. Because you are clearly afraid. I will not do that to you. You seem like a nice girl, Elizabeth. This would be a sin in your world. You don't want to do this, Naruto explained, which left the young nun speechless for a couple of moments. Why did that vampire care about her well-being? Things were not really how she imagined them. But if you do not drink, your powers will fade away, won't they? She asked, confused. Eventually, yes, Naruto confirmed. And without your powers, you cannot protect his holiness, can you? She asked, a sudden determination in her voice. It was almost firm. Where are you going with this? Naruto wanted to know. If you can't protect his holiness, because you didn't drink, then it is my fault if harm came to him. Elizabeth exclaimed, walking towards Naruto. And I would never forgive myself if that would happen. She fiddled around on her black dress with clumsy fingers before it came loose and fell to the ground, revealing her slender, pale body. She pulled off her veil, which hid her hazelnut brown, slightly curly hair. All my sins have been forgiven in advance. I am yours, she announced, now leaving Naruto completely speechless. She was naked. What in the name of all the devils had they told her would happen here? Why was she naked? While it was true that blood played an aphrodisiac part during intercourse with a vampire, the two parts didn't necessarily need each other. While you can fool around with food during sex, doesn't mean you necessarily have to eat naked as well, does it? What Naruto was seeing was just wrong on so many levels. He quickly picked up her dress and hung it over her shoulders to cover her up. I'd like to get to know you better first and explain a few things later, Naruto said with a smile, gesturing towards the table. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, Elizabeth? He asked of her. Another 2 days later. Urban knocked at the door of Naruto before letting himself in. He saw Elizabeth, the nun, sitting in the middle of Naruto's bed, the vampire behind her. She had her dress down over her left shoulder, revealing one of her 2 delicate breasts. Naruto was currently biting into the soft flesh, which connected her shoulder to her neck. Elizabeth had her mouth wide open, a silent moan was escaping her rose lips and a deep flush was covering her cheeks. As she had her head cocked backwards, it was resting on Naruto's shoulder. He had his arms wrapped around her waist from behind, not to keep her from running away. She was way too caught up in the sensation to even think about leaving. No, he held her tight, just to reassure her that nothing bad would happen to her. A fine line of blood was running down on her front side and over her breast, leaving a dark red line on her otherwise so pale skin before the drop of blood reached her hard nipple. It was a soft and slightly tingling sensation, which induced another soft moan of Elizabeth. Naruto became aware of another presence in the room. He left Elizabeth's soft flesh and the wonderful taste of her blood to look at Urban 4, who didn't mean to stare, but could not help. He snapped out of it when he realized that Naruto was aware of his presence. I see you two are getting along now. That is good to see. I need you at my side, Naruto. We travel to Paris in a couple of hours, Urban announced. As you wish, Your Excellency. Naruto replied, licking his lips clean, while handing the nun a silk towel to clean herself up. Elizabeth, in the meantime, pressed the soft fabric to her wound as she covered up again. Her face was still deep red from both the pleasure she received because of her blood being sucked, which was ridiculously arousing, as well as the embarrassment of being caught by the Pope. But he sent her to do this, did he not? I will prepare your luggage, Lord Arunos, she humbly stated, before she slid off the bed and left. There have been trust issues in the first days, but that surprisingly enough was overcome rather quickly. I made some friends and eventually became more than a bodyguard to His Holiness. As time passed, I became his most trusted advisor and best friend. Naruto smiled at the memory. Urban 4 was a good friend of his. Unfortunately, he died rather soon. But at least Elizabeth stayed at his side for a relatively long time before she replaced herself with another young and beautiful nun. She taught her how Naruto liked and handled things, so her start was way easier than Elizabeth's was. Her name was Anisha, and she was just as beautiful and caring as Elizabeth, with silver hair and bright green eyes. It was a sad day for both Naruto and Anisha when Sister Elizabeth passed away at an almost unnatural high age for a human. "So you have been with the church?" Akino wanted to know. She couldn't believe her ears. "Yes." Naruto nodded. "I protected a lot of popes and served them all well, until one day the threat demons and devils posed got out of hand. The then Pope decided I would be more helpful when fighting in the front lines, instead of protecting his ass in a fort, where I was basically just following him around all day. Thus, I was transferred to the Holy Roman Inquisition under His Holiness, Pope Nicholas V, in 1449 and soon promoted to a secret Grand Inquisitor." "You have been an Inquisitor as well?" Akino gasped. She could not believe any of this. How the hell was Rias so calm? She most likely knew his story already, but still. These were major news. "That is correct. I hunted down devils, demons, and fallen angels with deadly precision. Nicholas V was surely a strategic genius. Under his command, I was able to greatly decimate the enemy lines. But unfortunately his time came one day as well, and the next pope didn't see the issue as pressing as Nicholas did. But he left me a rather free hand in the matter nevertheless. So I kept pacifying areas with alarming activities. Wherever I could help, I did. Interestingly, over time the cause of most incidents changed from devils to fallen angels. I'd like to think that I did my job very well, maybe a little too well, because I got less and less to do with each year." "So you did not only hunt devils, did you?" Akino inquired. "Of course not," silly Rias interjected while shaking her head. "You know as well as I do that we withdrew most human interaction during that time. We adopted the contract system, and so the only devils left for Naruto to fight were strays. The fallen angels were the only ones who still caused a commotion. She helped out." Naruto nodded. "That is true. However, time progressed and the threat fallen angels and devils posed to mankind slowly turned to be negligible, so around 1750 the Holy Roman Inquisition was shut down by His Holiness, Pope Innocent VIII. Following the shutdown, I was ordered back to the Vatican, where I, for reasons I do not know, didn't get any more jobs assigned, nor was I allowed to serve as the Pope's bodyguard anymore. I guess they forgot me someday, because all I did was sit around. For centuries. I just sat in my room and waited. Sometimes a monk would come by and ask me questions about the past, but that was rare. It was pure poison for me. Once I was a proud and chivalrous knight and vampire, protecting the weak while punishing the evil. I had honor and pride, but in that time it just faded away. Day in, day out I was just sitting around, feeling absolutely useless. The people I swore to protect and fight for, the people I trusted, just forgot about me. It was a terrible feeling. I just waited for something to happen, but it was futile. Nothing ever happened. Until they apparently remembered they had a spare vampire waiting somewhere, who suddenly came and rather handy." Naruto snorted loudly, his eyes falling to the floor. "What happened?" Akino asked silently. She had that feeling it would not be nice. "I served His Holiness and the Church for nearly 800 years before I was sold." Naruto spat the last word like it was poisonous. He felt the feeling of humiliation and betrayal creeping up in him again, as it did every time he thought back to it. "I served them with all my heart and body for the better part of a millennium, and after all I did for them. After all I endured in their name. After all the sacrifices I made to protect them. All they do is sell me to save their own sorry asses. Ignorant fools. I would have annihilated their enemy, like I always did. They just had to ask. But they didn't. Instead, they forgot and sold me like an unwanted doll. Traitors. Naruto's voice got bitter and silent. Akino looked at Naruto, who was fighting with tears. If she wasn't here herself, she wouldn't believe any of this. Ria spoke up for Naruto. She already knew the story, and he had trouble with that part in front of her as well. She figured it out herself, so all he had to do was nod. They sold him to the Nazis so they could run experiments on him. In exchange, the Nazis promised to spare the church if they'd win the war, Ria explained to her best friend. Akino formed a silent O. They paid for it. Both sides. Naruto replied bitterly after that. I wandered Earth aimlessly. I had no purpose anymore, no reason to exist. My pride and honor was stripped from me. The world had changed, and society as well. I was viewed as a freak, as someone who wasn't right in his head. And I might have drifted into insanity for a little bit, until I was found by someone from the organization. The old man took me in as his own son, gave me a reason to live and a new purpose. He gave me back some pride and some form of honor. I have been serving his purpose ever since. Yes, he is only loyal to money and knows no side. But he sticks to his rules and does not abandon them. He cares for the people who are working for and with him. The old man is adherent to his principles. He sometimes reminds me of the Count. Naruto had a fond smile on his lips at the thought, before reality seemed to catch up to him. That was until yesterday. I guess. Since I have a new master now, he shot Rias a painful smile, before he looked back at the floor. He didn't look up a lot during his story. Suddenly a thought crossed Rias' mind. If it was so painful for him to talk about the last part, how horrible must the memories be of the events he skipped in the beginning? The thought made her really uneasy. I promise you, Naruto, we are very principled as well. Please don't worry. Our family sticks together through thick and thin. Ria said firmly. She wanted him to know that everyone in her peerage, including herself, was absolutely full of integrity. So that's why he didn't drink any tea nor ate any cake at his welcome party. And Rias defended him for it. He wouldn't have been able to stomach it. Because he is a vampire. Akino looked gobsmacked. She had to sit down, but the couch was so far away. So she leaned onto the president's desk instead. She had no idea what the most shocking news was. The part of him being the vampire, the part of him serving the church as a freaking inquisitor, or the part of him being a hired gun. Akino didn't like hired guns, true. She always questioned their loyalty, and money just didn't strike her as a good enough reason for true loyalty. But Naruto seemed decent, and Rias made it rather clear that she fully trusted him. So, okay, Akino could live with the mercenary part. He had been an inquisitor as well, also true, but that was almost 300 years ago, wasn't it? And the church betrayed him, so it seemed unlikely he held any loyalties to them anymore. Besides, he was a devil now, so it really didn't matter that much, did it? Also, she guessed there wasn't an awful lot a vampire could have done back in the day. If he didn't want to be hunted his entire life, he would have to become the hunter himself. Akino didn't like it, but she understood. Or so she thought. The true reason why Naruto joined the church, the true reason Count Dracula sent him to the Pope, the true reason why he even became a vampire in the first place was still his secret. But sooner or later he would have to tell Rias about her. So you are telling me you are a 1,285-year-old vampire turned inquisitor turned stray turned assassin? A vampire assassin? A vampire? 1,000 and nearly 300 freaking years old? I don't even. She asked in disbelief while she stared at Naruto. Suddenly he was gone. Vanished right in front of her eyes. No plop or anything. Just gone. You don't believe me? He asked from the wall behind her. Akino turned around to see him standing behind Rias. She had no idea how he got there. Rias just sat in her chair. She didn't seem too impressed. She asked almost the same question and got the same result. Aquino would just have to learn like Rias did, though Rias of course didn't question his vampirism. She had seen it with her own eyes and felt it on her own body. Naruto proceeded to walk towards Aquino, through the fucking desk, as if it wasn't even there. He walked past a completely calm Rias. He had used the table in her living room to demonstrate, so yes, she had seen this as well. Aquino felt her jaw drop as he walked through the definitely solid object. This should not be possible. As Naruto stepped out of the desk, he reached out for Aquino. He forcefully grabbed her neck and pulled her towards him with only one arm, turning her around in a swift motion and pressing her down on the president's desk. Okay, that was actually new to Rias as well, but she would let him do his thing for a little longer, curious where he was going. His eyes were glowing in that violet red, which Rias had seen before, as he stared down on Aquino, whose hands were clinging to Naruto's wrist. "How would you like it, if I tasted you?" he asked. His voice was suddenly extremely deep, a beastly growl underneath it. "Tell me, are you still a virgin?" He opened his mouth to reveal his long fangs, which were dripping from saliva. Aquino had her eyes wide open, her face was flushing all over as she stared at Naruto, who was pressing her down to the desk. She couldn't move, no matter how hard she tried. He had her pinned to the desk. And she liked it. "That's enough of a display," Naruto. Rias said calmly. "I am the only one you drink from." Naruto immediately let go of Aquino, his eyes turned to the normal blue and his fangs disappeared. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, stepping back at a moment's notice. Aquino coughed as she got up from the table, catching her breath. "Wow," she panted. "That was quite the display." She actually giggled a little before she purred. "I am really turned on now. And here I am, thinking you are a sadist, when in reality you are a masochist," Rias stated dryly, while she facepalmed. "Best of both worlds," the priestess of thunder replied with a sly grin. "Say, did I imagine a part where you said he'd drink from you?" Aquino asked, truly curious. "No, you heard that quite right. Naruto needs blood to survive, and I am more than happy to provide. It's my duty to make sure he is well." After all, Rias explained. "Wouldn't that turn you into a vampire as well?" Aquino wanted to know. Naruto shook his head. "No, only if I wanted to turn her. It's an act which needs to be done willingly. I can drink blood without turning someone into my kind," he explained. "So you allowed him to drink from you?" Aquino asked in disbelief. It sounded strange. "Sure I did. I want him to be happy after all," Rias replied truthfully. My, isn't that something?" Aquino purred, but saw that Rias wasn't paying attention to her anymore. The Crimson Princess looked at Naruto, who looked away, almost like he was ashamed of something. "You know what?" the black-haired beauty said. "I am going to leave you two to it. I get the feeling you need to figure some things out before everyone gets to know about it. So consider me clueless. Just fill us in as soon as you got everything sorted out, okay?" she announced. That got her back Rias' attention. "Thank you, Aquino," the Crimson Princess replied, and was truly thankful of her best friend. "We know each other so long." "It's normal," Aquino shrugged, before she turned around to leave. She walked past Naruto before she stopped. "Hey badass," she said, turning once more to poke Naruto in his shoulder. The vampire looked over his shoulder. "To answer your question, I am still a virgin," she teasingly winked at him. "So swing by whenever, okay?" "Aquino!" Rias exclaimed loudly, as her best friend was already facing the exit again, walking towards it. "What? A girl can't enjoy some light choking?" the queen replied, before the door fell close. "I am sorry about her," Rias said. "No. It is me who has to apologize. I failed you. And I am very sorry for it. Please forgive me." Naruto actually got down on his knees for that. Rias immediately stood up from her place and walked over to him, gently pulling him up. "You don't need to apologize. I don't know you nearly as well as I want to." Just make sure you communicate with me a little more, okay? Tell me what you think and what you want, so I can make you happy, all right? I want you to be happy, she said to him, standing really close. He looked so sad and almost broken, so Rias stepped forward and gave him a hug. And for a short moment he responded to it, hugging her back. I'm sorry, he suddenly said, stepping out of her warm embrace, while whispering, I can't. Rias watched him closely, and could see how much he was hurting, but had no idea what to do. Is it because something happened in that time you left out in your story? She asked softly, guiding him to the couches and sitting him down, before letting herself fall next to him. She was thinking about taking his hand, but decided against it. He didn't seem to be ready for physical contact. Naruto just nodded. Is it because of a woman? She asked again, and after some hesitation got another slow nod. She must have been something very special, Rias stated, and cursed herself for being jealous. But she couldn't help it. No matter who this girl was, she wanted to be in her place. She was. Naruto replied with a breaking voice, before he looked up. He was crying silently. Rias reached out to wipe his tears away with the sleeve of her shirt. Do you want to tell me what happened? She asked carefully. She got taken away from me. I failed her. That's why I became a vampire. That's why the Count sent me to serve the church. So one day I could avenge her, he stated, his voice turned firm and determined in the middle of his sentence. I will find the one responsible for her death, and I will bestow him with the same suffering he put her through. The same suffering he put me through. I shall not know mercy on that day. He looked at her, like a little boy who got lost in a supermarket, trying to find his mommy. Rias reached out and pulled him towards her, getting the feeling he could really use a hug now. The way he spoke about the person who did this to him made apparent that whoever he was, clearly was no human. Maybe a fallen angel, or a devil. She crossed out the angels, because otherwise Naruto would have never joined the church. I know you will, she reassured with an unwavering certainty in her voice. And I will stand by your side when you do, she gently stroked through his hair. Naruto rose his head from her chest to look at her face. This was most likely the best thing he ever heard in the last 1,000 years or more. He felt a weight lifted from his shoulders, and for the first time he just let it happen. He acknowledged that Rias was there for him and would help him. She was a kind woman, forgiving in nature and loyal to those who she held close. Naruto saw it now. He felt ashamed for ever doubting it. Suddenly the feeling of betraying her whenever he was with another woman was gone, and before he knew what he was doing, he was hugging Rias back. You are serious about this, aren't you, ma'am? He asked carefully. Of course I am, silly. Just make sure you let me in a little, okay? She replied softly, I can't help, if you are always so cold around me. I don't bite, she smiled at him. That somehow felt like a spear through Naruto's heart. He wasn't cold towards her, was he? Was he? He probably was. Shit, he had been an asshole again. Good job, Naruto. Good job. Go and fix it, you idiot. I wouldn't mind if you did, he replied, making an attempt to lighten the mood a little, while he was sitting back up again. He was feeling so much better now, just because she was here. Rias reminded him so much of her. Well, not physically, besides their voluptuous bust the two women had nothing in common. But their character was so similar, it was almost scary. He would do anything to keep her safe. Safe and happy. Well, maybe safe before anything else, but he could try and work on the happy part someday. Before Rias could say anything, he spoke up again. Ma'am, he asked. Yes? Rias looked at him. Damn, how did she fall in love with him so fast? She knew him for a little more than 2 weeks now and already felt like she couldn't live without him. She had to hold herself back, though. Rias was well aware that his emotional stability was fragile at best. She'd wait for him to realize how she felt for himself and leave the decision to him. Until that day, she would just support him however she could and do her best to make him feel comfortable. Would you do me a favor? I have to report back to headquarters and fill them in on everything. Especially my new contract. He spoke the last word like he didn't really think of it as a contract anymore. Instead, he made it sound a lot like friendship. Would you go with me? It would certainly make things a lot easier, he asked and rubbed his thumbs together nervously. Of course, Rias replied with a reassuring smile on her lips. Naruto smiled back at her. This somehow felt so good. He got the feeling of starting a new life. One where he wasn't haunted by the shadows of his past. A new life with new friends. And new hope. Would she mind? For Chapter 3. What are you doing up here, Rainera? Calawarner asked as she stepped into the dark, dusty old attic of the abandoned church, high on the mountain. She could see her best friend and technically her superior standing in front of the round window on the end of the attic. Rainera was leaning to a wooden post, her arms crossed over her chest as she looked out into the dark night, the city lights shimmering down below them. She was lost deep in thought, so deep in fact that she didn't even hear Calawarner call for her. Only when Calawarner reached out to touch Rainera's shoulder did the raven-haired fallen angel realize someone was there. Startled, she spun around to see her best friend standing behind her, with a worried expression. What's wrong, Ray? The blue-haired woman asked. Rainera had been acting strangely since she came back from killing that assassin. She didn't talk to anyone anymore and was just so not like herself at all. The otherwise rather joyful and buoyant girl Rainera used to be was gone. Calawarner had been worried about her since Ray came back and didn't even tell her what happened. She was waiting for her best friend to revert back to normal, but she didn't. When Rainera didn't show up to dinner this evening, Calawarner went to search for her. Rainera wasn't in her room when she came to talk to her. It took the blue-haired fallen one a while to realize where Ray was probably hiding, thus deciding to take a look at the attic. The two of them knew each other for a very long time, and Calawarner was very much aware of how Rainera's mind worked. She just knew she'd be hiding in the attic. And bingo, there she was. Nothing, Rainera answered with a forced smile. I've just been thinking, she stated, but sounded so very sad. Thinking? Calawarner rose an eyebrow. About what? She wanted to know, looking in Rainera's beautiful violet eyes and suddenly seeing they were a little red and puffy. Rainera tried to quickly wipe the remains of her tears away, but Calawarner gently caught her hands before she could reach her eyes. Ray, have you been crying? Calawarner asked softly, cupping the hands of her best friends in her own. The blue-haired fallen angel had a feeling something was bothering Rainera, and she obviously was right. Now she was really grateful she came to look for her. Rainera considered denying it, but it was useless. Her best friend would see right through her. Yes, she admitted, slouching her shoulders. I think I made a terrible mistake, she confessed in a whisper. Is it because of that assassin? Calawarner wanted to know. Rainera was silent for a long moment. This was her last opportunity to deny everything. To just say it was nothing and walk away. But it would have been a mistake. Yes, she stated feebly, like a child who got caught with its hand in the cookie jar. I know he didn't have the sacred gear we were hoping for, but I don't see why you are so worked up over it. You killed him, so what? He was an assassin, they die sooner or later. It's their job, if you think about it, isn't it? Come on, it's no biggie, Calawarner shrugged. Rainera's eyes suddenly watered again, and her best friend realized she maybe should not have said it so harshly. Tears were rolling down her cheeks again, and her lips were quivering. Rainera squealed, her voice as trembling as her lips, while she was trying to speak while sobbing uncontrollably. He was nice, you know. He didn't deserve it this way. It wasn't even fair. And he wasn't mad. This was wrong. I shouldn't have killed him. Rainera gasped for breath, before she continued. I really liked him. Rainer of Calawarner stepped forward to pull her crying friend into a tight hug. Not again. Instinctively, the black-haired fallen angel wrapped her arms around her friend and held onto her for dear life. This was too much for her. It was eating her away since she returned. The only reason she was able to stay sane was because she justified to herself that she eliminated a dangerous sacred gear user, someone who would have sooner or later turned against her and those she tried to protect. But then the news came in that Naruto didn't even possess what her superior was searching for. When it happened, Rainer felt like she'd collapse any second. She couldn't comprehend that she killed that man for nothing. That man, who was so nice to her, even though she was really demanding and he clearly uncomfortable. He still was nice and polite and a true gentleman. But she killed him because that stupid, arrogant idiot Kokobile ordered her to do so. And as usual, if Kokobile wanted something, Rainer was left with no other choice but to do what he said. Either that or face brutal punishment. Which would mean a horribly slow and equally brutal death not only for herself, but for those she held close as well. Most of all Calawarner. When will you learn it? You can't put your job before yourself all the time. I'm so sorry. Rainer cried into Calawarner's shoulder. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done this. I knew it was wrong when I did it. I knew it. And now I can never apologize to him. He can never forgive me. I can never forgive myself. Why him? She gasped for air, before blurting out, I feel like dirt. You aren't dirt, sweetie, Calawarner said calmly, stroking through Rainer's hair. Though you are a colossal idiot. This has to stop. We'll take care of that nun, who is arriving today, and then we'll call quits. Just tell Kokobile where to stick it and go to tell Azazel everything. Why were we following that arrogant prick in the first place? Because Azazel is a lazy fuck who doesn't do shit. Rainer was still crying. True, but at least he is no psychopath who is killing people for sacred gears. And now we are stuck with Kokobile because of the things he'll do to us should we betray him. The only way out is to give him what he wants for now and then start running. Why are you saying it aloud? Rainer pressed herself closer to Calawarner, who suddenly picked her up and sat down on the floor, her best friend in her lap. Because it's true, Calawarner replied sadly. We'll take care of that nun, so Kokobile is satisfied long enough for us to slip away. Sound good? Rainer nodded against her friend's chest, where she currently was hiding her face. What about Middlet and Donasek? She sniffled. Her friend's plan did sound rather good. Just one more time and then they'd be gone. One more time of doing something Rainer never wanted to do in the first place, and then they'd run and hide under a rock somewhere far, far away. Oh, just screw those two. No one likes them anyway. Calawarner shrugged dismissively and had a lax tone in her voice, like she truly didn't care. That at least made Rainer laugh a little. Or at least she tried, but it sounded more like a fucked up sob. It ripped Calawarner apart. Rainer wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. The black-haired angel fell only because of her best friend. She should have never gone down that path. She should have never dragged Rainer along. But she did. And now they had to deal with this mess, and Rainer had to deal with all that guilt. It was wrong. Just wrong. // A couple of hours later, some miles away from Kuo, in the heart of Tokyo, it was a beautiful, sunny day with perfect spring temperature and a few fluffy white clouds on the otherwise perfectly clear blue sky. Two people, a woman and a man, were walking up to the tallest building in the entire city. They were drawing quite some attention, as everyone who walked by seemed to stare at the crimson-haired beauty, who was walking by that sharp-looking man with a badass scar in his face. Just where the hell are we, Naruto? Rias asked as she stepped into a large hall in the basement of a ridiculously tall skyscraper. Headquarters for SEA, I told you already, ma'am. Naruto replied firmly and with the utmost confidence. This was his world, and he was so used to it that he didn't waste a second thought about moving in it. Rias immediately realized that he was doing all this for some time. She knew the second he picked her up from her apartment. There was a whole new level of confidence to him, one that she hadn't seen until now. He had told her that he was rather good at everything which was related to business. The personal and interhuman stuff was what gave him trouble all the time. Rias just replied he'd get better at it over time as she got into his car. Or whatever that flat, bright orange, two-seated infernal machine was. It certainly was loud, and it also was lots of fun to drive, at least judging from the smile Naruto had on his lips during their ride. He said his car was one of the few things which he got for nothing else but sheer fun. Rias was happy to hear that he did anything for fun at all and thus enjoyed it herself, just because he did. He left his ride in the hands of a bellhop in front of the skyscraper who took care of the parking. The assassin walked Rias through the glass front door into the cool entrance hall, which had almost excessive amounts of white and black marble basically everywhere, mixed with clear lines of decorative glass elements. The floor and the walls, everything was marble, with straight lines and without any scrollwork. It was a modern simplicity, lacking in personality but offering a great deal of anonymity instead. The interior could have been anywhere in the world and wouldn't look different. Rias didn't like the style too much, but well, for business, she supposed it was all right. She looked at Naruto demandingly, but he didn't say anything. Rias sighed to herself. Damn, this was about to be a great day. Even without the stuff they had to get done. She already knew her day would be great when she saw Naruto this morning, but couldn't help and muster him again. He was wearing a very good-looking light gray business suit, with a white silk shirt and silver tie. The light colors he chose brought his dark hair really forward. His jacket was open, beneath it he wore a waistcoat in a gray, maybe a shade darker than the rest of his suit. Naruto looked really sharp. Rias almost started drooling when she saw him this morning. She herself had changed out of her usual school uniform and wore a dark black female suit, which Naruto kindly provided as a rather unexpected surprise. She was pretty amazed by his skills in judging her size, because the suit really fit her perfectly. And he was pretty amazed by the fact that she just changed into it in front of him, giving him a good view of her elegant curves. The skirt may have been a little long for her taste, but it was a business outfit after all, so no hard feelings here. If this is your headquarters, could you please tell me why everyone is staring at us like we are some kind of circus attraction? She wanted to know as she subconsciously moved closer to Naruto while they were crossing the entrance hall. Well, on the one hand, it's because they all want to know if it is really me who is making his appearance here, but I guess that's only the minor reason, ma'am, he replied with a cheeky grin on his lips. Sometimes the vampire was a terrible annoying tease, and the worst part was he knew it. Then what is the major reason? Rias demanded to know as she stepped into an elevator with Naruto. He chose the highest number available on the pad and the doors closed, luckily leaving them alone. May I speak openly, ma'am? Naruto asked, and there it was again, the ma'am sounding like kiddo. Sure, just spill it already. Rias pressed her hands to her hips in a demanding manner. He leaned a little to her side, as if he tried to make it look like he'd tell her a secret. It's because there are no words to describe your beauty with. You look even more breathtaking in that outfit than in your school uniform. It's gorgeous, he replied bluntly. Rias felt herself blush. Oh, stop it. You are making a girl uneasy. Rias replied with a playful undertone as she gently nudged him in his side. She liked it that he found her attractive. It was something she could work with. Apologies. You wish to learn the reason, ma'am kiddo. The doors of the elevator opened and Naruto stepped out of it, followed by Rias shortly behind him. They found themselves in a small foyer high above the ground. There was a single black marble desk in an otherwise white room. The short walls to their far left and right were made from glass, providing a nice view over Tokyo, but the long walls were held in white marble. Behind the desk there were the doors of another elevator. A woman was sitting between desk and elevator, looking at them. A clock was ticking somewhere, but this was the only sound, apart from Naruto's and Ria's footsteps. Otherwise there was nothing but silence. As Naruto arrived in front of the desk, the reception lady put down her half-moon-formed glasses. She had short, brown hair, reaching down to her neck and cut shorter in the back than in the front. Her hazelnut brown eyes were warm, her left eye a little hidden behind a strand of hair. She had a beautiful face, her expression was professional, but polite. "Welcome back, number one," she greeted. Her voice didn't reveal any emotions. It was just the same professional politeness she wore on her face. Miriam. Naruto returned. "I am here to see the old man." "I know." Lady Grimmery has to roster herself. The woman, whose name obviously was Miriam, reached for a tablet PC and handed it to Rias. The red-haired woman looked at the display and skimmed it quickly. It was a document which registered her as a possible new customer and stated she wasn't allowed to disclose anything concerning the things she was about to discuss. Basically a NDA. Rias signed the document with her finger and gave the tablet PC back to Miriam. "You know who I am?" Rias asked, a little surprised. "Of course. It's been a while since we had the Grimmery family as a customer." Rias rose an eyebrow at that, but chose to not say anything. This was the receptionist, she most likely didn't know anything. "You can proceed now, number one." Miriam indicated to the elevator behind her. "Thanks, Miriam," Naruto replied, leading Rias to the elevator. "Number one. Lady Grimmery." "Have a nice day," Miriam said, as they already stepped into the elevator. // So what exactly are we doing here now? Rias wanted to know as she was standing in front of a large wooden door, which was closed. "Well, technically you will contract me for a long-term job. But it's difficult, you know, with the whole devil stuff. I just want to explain it to the old man." Naruto replied. "Don't worry, he's nice. You'll probably have to sign some papers, since you basically own me now." "I do not own you," Rias replied quickly, "but firmly you are a servant of mine. Not a toy. Or a slave. You are family now. Don't ever think I deem you my property." She made herself rather clear, the way she said it. "Then this won't be a problem," Naruto replied with a smile on his lips before knocking on the door. Rias stepped into an office, which was so nothing like the rest of the building. It was actually rather warm and welcoming, despite the glass walls, which provided an excellent view over Tokyo City. The SEA headquarters of the organization was the highest building of the whole city, so it wasn't surprising that the view was breathtaking. Standing in front of one of the window walls, a man was looking out over the skyline. He didn't wear shoes, the black socks on his feet were sinking into the thick, fleecy carpet, which was made of squares of different modest colors. The man in front of the window was African American and was wearing a light beige suit with a white shirt, without a tie. As he turned around, Rias saw that he was holding a cup of coffee in his hand. While he certainly was at an advanced age, he certainly was not old enough to qualify as an old man, how Naruto always called him. The head of the organization might have been in his 60s. "Welcome back, Naruto," he greeted the man, who he saw as his own son, with a warm smile, before he turned to Rias. "Lady Grimmery, it's always a pleasure doing business with your family." "The pleasure is mine," Rias said politely, yet again wondering what it was with her family and this organization. She had never heard of it. "Rias, this is the head of the organization," Lucius declared. Naruto introduced the old man. "He is the one who took me in after." "Well, you know," he said. "And you, old man, this is—" "Never mind, you already know." Naruto shrugged. "Indeed I do," Lucius replied with a faint chuckle, before he said, "Please, have a seat." The old man pointed at his old Victorian desk with two guest chairs in front of it. He set the cup of coffee down and placed himself in the comfortable-looking executive chair on the other side, the skyline of Tokyo behind him. Rias and Naruto sat down next to each other, waiting for the boss to speak up again. "Tell me, son, how was your last mission? We haven't heard of the customer yet." Lucius wanted to know. "It was a trap," Naruto said. "A setup. Walked right into it," he said tersely. Lucius shook his head. "Oh, that certainly doesn't look like you. What happened?" He wanted to know. "Well, what happens when you get a light spear through your heart? You die, of course," Naruto replied with a sarcastic tone. "Despite the fact that you are dead for more than 1,000 years, son, you seem awfully alive to me." Lucius chuckled. "And something tells me that this is mostly because of your doing, Lady Grimmery." He turned to Rias. His dark brown eyes were friendly, but stern. He radiated a strange authority like he was the head of a very large, old, and powerful family. Caring and loving, but also strict and unforgiving. His voice was like dark chocolate, low-pitched, but definitely pleasing in the ears. The Crimson Princess could see why Naruto thought as a father of Lucius. He definitely had something fatherly. "You are right," Mr. declared. Rias replied. "I found him in the park, bleeding to death. So I took him in as one of my own," she explained. "I see. So he is one of your servants now?" Lucius asked. "He is," Rias replied. Lucius nodded slowly, leaning back in his chair before resting his hands on his chest, putting each finger on the other. He watched closely as Naruto glanced over to Rias with an expression which the Claire could read immediately. "Wow, that was fast." He closed his eyes and concentrated before he felt the connection which was clearly building between the Grimmery girl and the vampire. It looked like thin red threads of silk waving between the two. Even if it only was the beginning, Lucius could see it was set to be very strong one day. Somehow he was not surprised. The Grimmerys were infamous for their caring relationships towards their servants. More than one of them had fallen in love with one of their servants as well. Rias surely was no exception to the rule. Lucius understood how that would work out for Naruto. After all, he really needed someone who was there for him, no matter what. Someone who could fill the deep black hole she had left. The head of the organization saw Rias fitting into that hole just nicely. "I see," he said after a while, Rias looking at him confused. She felt him reach out with some kind of aura, though it wasn't demonic, nor was it angelic. It was neutral, somehow. A strange feeling. It didn't feel threatening, it just was there and then it was gone again. Like he'd said hello with his mind. "So I guess you came here to contract him?" DeClaire asked. "Actually, I have no idea how this is handled. I understand that Naruto is usually paid for his work. If this is..." Rias was interrupted by Lucius, who rose his hand. No, he laughed softly, before he took a sip of his coffee. "Money is not the issue. He is my best agent, but he is also my son. And he seems to be rather content with being in your peerage." "That's because I am," old man Naruto laughed. "Thought so." Lucius had a warm fatherly smile on his lips, but he did look a little sad as well. At least Rias thought it might have been sadness, but she could have been mistaken. "By the way, how are your legs, son?" Hurting, as always." Naruto shrugged. "Doesn't get better?" Lucius asked. Rias didn't say anything, but her eyes lit up for a second. She didn't know Naruto's legs were causing him pain. She noted it down as one of the things she'd have to take care of. "Nah, but it's okay. As long as I'm in movement, it's fine." "I see," Lucius said. Apparently it was his favorite thing to say. The head of the organization scratched his chin for a second. "All right, here's what we are going to do. I will mark Naruto as long-term contracted by Lady Grimmery. This way he won't get any jobs from us anymore, but still has access to our resources should he need them and will get his payment. How does this sound? He asked. Good to me, Naruto said, shrugging. It was the best way to do it. With the resources of the organization still at his disposal, he could be much more of a help to Rias. If it's fine with you, Naruto, it's fine with me as well, Rias replied. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I want you to be happy. If this makes you happy, we'll do it this way, she said, and absolutely meant it. Lucius had to keep his smile down, but this was just so adorable. It was true what was said about the Grimoire. They cared about their people. It said then, Naruto, why don't you go for a little walk to ease your pain? Lady Grimoire will have to sign some papers, and I know how boring that is for you. He looked warmly at the man, who he accepted as his son, despite his age. Naruto might have been old, but he still needed guidance. His mind wasn't settled down, it was turning and running and kicking around, and Lucius knew it. Naruto was, despite his age, tormented by his past. He would most likely always need someone he could hold on to, someone who'd show him there was peace as well. Lucius tried it, but he wasn't in the best position to do it. What Naruto needed was someone to take over the place the woman he lost left vacant for so long. Naruto looked at the old man and understood immediately. There were things he wanted to tell Rias, without him around. Lucius always looked out for him, and this was most likely the How to Thread a Vampire 101 tutorial for Rias. Sure, old man. Thanks. Naruto stood up and reached into his pocket, handing the car keys to Rias. See you at school? He asked. Rias automatically took the keys, but suddenly realized her mistake. I can't drive, she exclaimed. Don't worry, I'll take care of that. She'll get home safely, Lucius reassured. Naruto nodded as he walked to the door. Don't forget my car, he said, before he was gone. So what do you want me to sign? Rias asked, coming straight to the point. Which wasn't the point at all, she figured as much. Nothing, I guess, right? Precisely. Lucius answered, smiling. He liked this girl from the first moment he saw her. She seemed honest. And as sad as it might have been, honest people were getting very scarce lately. Tell me, Lady Grimoire, how much do you know about vampires? He opened, reclining in his really comfortable-looking chair. Declare was calm and spoke with steady voice, all in all very likable. Rias cleared her throat carefully. Well, the basics, I guess. There are 3 types of vampires divided into 2 groups. Pure-blooded vampires, turned vampires who used to be human at some point in their life, and half-blooded vampires, father a vampire, mother a human. So-called dampiers. Rias counted the different subtypes of vampires on their fingers. The 3 types divide themselves into 2 factions, the Vampire Society and the Strays. The society itself it divided furthermore into the Teeps faction, following a male true ancestor, and the Carmilla faction, following a female one. Stray vampires are very much comparable to stray devils. They wreak havoc on the innocent, kill and murder as they please, they have no dignity whatsoever. Rias convulsed her face in disgust. Strays were the worst type of basically anything. Filthy anarchists, no rules, no moral standards, no class. Nothing. Lowly animals acting purely on their carnal desires. There was nothing rational left inside them. They degraded to beasts. And nothing more. Lucius nodded slowly. You are mostly correct. However, there are not 2 but 3 groups of vampires, he revealed, causing Rias to blink. There are, she asked in disbelief. Never before had she heard something like that. Yes. There are also the neutral ones. There is a neutral faction? The crimson-haired princess of ruins gasped. Indeed. It is a very secret and very exclusive circle of just a handful of vampires. Their view on the world is rather different to the way the Vampire Society sees things. Follower of the neutral path, try to keep an open mind and have nothing of the arrogance the society has grown to display on such a regular basis. Neutral ones are what you might consider true vampires, though I doubt they would ever describe themselves this way, he explained. Rias wondered for a moment how that human was possibly able to know all those things, but she supposed, since he had to do with apparently quite a lot of supernatural things, he was well informed. How does the society accept something like that? Isn't it some kind of blasphemy to them? Rias inquired curiously. The Vampire Society was elitist to no end and viewed anything else but pure-blooded vampires as inferior, going so far as to exclude members of the own family, which they deemed not pure enough. The pure-blood fanatism some extremist devils displayed was nothing compared to how the average vampire thought about these things. Lucius chuckled, reaching for his cup of coffee. Oh, they don't accept it at all. But they have little choice in the matter, he said, continuing before Ria's quizzical expression would be followed by a voiced variant of what was written on her face. The neutral faction is small. Very small. But their members are the most powerful vampires the world has ever seen, he explained, still calm, but a proud smirk on his lips. Like who, for example? Rias wanted to know. Well, there is of course the founder. Dracula himself, though no one knows if he is still alive or simply vanished. He makes a habit of disappearing for a couple of centuries before he shows up again. Maybe some kind of vacation, I don't know. Declared laughed softly at the imagination of how Dracula's holidays might look like. Then there would also be a certain alkd Brunestad. I am sure you have heard her name before. The white-haired princess of the Crimson Moon? The most powerful ancestor ever? The alkd Brunestad? Rias gasped. I didn't know she was still alive. The very same, yes. She apparently lives, but doesn't show herself when not absolutely necessary, he explained, and the last important one, who is worth being mentioned by name, is the one Dracula selected to be his son and heir. You know him quite well. Naruto. Rias breathed. She of course knew he was turned by Dracula, he told her this much already. What she didn't know, however, was that the black-haired vampire also was going to be Dracula's heir. Somehow the crimson-haired Run princess imagined that the Count must have turned quite a lot of people during his life and that Naruto was simply one of many. Apparently not. Precisely. The only son of the no-life king. Quite possibly the oldest and most powerful vampire, apart from Dracula, is now in your service, Lady Grimmery. The word spoken so clearly carried a heavy meaning to Rias. This had to sink in for a moment, as Rias tried to catch up with what she just was told. So Naruto was the son of Dracula, that wasn't new. But he was also his only son, which naturally meant he was also the Count's heir. But not enough, her newly found servant was part of a groupuscule powerful enough to defy the will of the society. Well, she supposed, since Dracula founded the faction it made sense, but still. Major news here, she still couldn't quite believe it. He really likes you, did you know that? The head of the organization asked, feeling it was time to leave the general vampire talk and get to the important things. Rias' eyes lit up. Partly because she didn't expect their conversation taking this rather surprising turn, but mostly because of the revelation. He does, she asked after another moment of silence, in which she pondered if and what she could tell declare. He was acting as a father figure to Naruto, was he not? So she should probably be on the square. I don't know. Whenever we get closer, he pushes me away again. Just to let me come closer again and push me away. It's confusing. Lucius chuckled. I can imagine. He is difficult. I figured as much, Rias replied with a suppressed giggle. You know, it's funny. He is so much older than me, and yet I feel like his father. And as his father I want him to be happy. Which is why I wanted to talk to you, why I am telling you all of this. It has nothing to do with the organization. This is only the father talking now, who knows the man he accepted as his son is now bound to a new family. I want to make sure my boy goes to a place where he is respected and can be happy. Lucius clarified with a serious expression. I want him to be happy as well. But I have no idea how to give it to him. One day I get the feeling he'd want me to just cuddle him until he passes out. The next I can't help but get the feeling I should just leave him alone forever. Lucius nodded slowly. Rhea seemed to be the perfect woman. Lucius just knew it. Do you know why you had to reincarnate him? Despite him being so powerful? Do you know why it was necessary for you to save him? DeClaire asked. Rhea rose an eyebrow. What kind of question was that? Well, because he was dying, she asked back, a little confused. Yes, true. But did you know why he was dying? He is the son of Dracula, after all. Lucius watched Rhea think for a moment, before shaking her head. She had no idea. I don't know how long precisely, but he didn't drink any blood in quite a while. It was never something he had been very keen on doing, at least not for the time I know him. But, when he doesn't drink, he slowly grows weak. His powers fade away, his self-healing vanishes. He becomes mortal again. Not that he'd care, Lucius explained. He can drink blood from animals so he does not starve, but even though he might not physically age, his time is ticking nevertheless. Even when weakened like this, Naruto is still a formidable fighter and not to be underestimated. Yet he is only a fraction of a shadow of what he truly can do. To restore his power and for him to unfold his true potential, it needs. Lucius was interrupted by Rias. The blood of a virgin, she replied silently. She knew there was more to it than what Naruto had told her. But she'd never have thought it might have been this important. And Rias hadn't even heard the main event yet. Yes, precisely. Only the blood of a virgin empowers a vampire with all the skills and powers he acquired in his lifetime. They get more powerful the longer they live. Did you know that? No, I didn't, Rias replied. Thought so. All his powers slowly fade away, apart from the one trait he inherited from Dracula on the day he turned him. It's something which only runs in the Count's bloodline and makes him so unique. You know what it is? Rhea shook her head, as DeClaire continued his ability to walk in daylight. Apart from the half-bloods, only the vampires following Dracula's line can do that. It is part of their vampirism and as such won't fade away over time. Anything else will. It doesn't matter that Naruto is the most powerful vampire of them all, apart from Dracula himself. Even the Count will be helpless if he doesn't get to drink the blood of a virgin for a while. No vampire can sustain his abilities without pure blood. This holds true for Naruto as well. His regeneration is the first thing which will fade away, followed by his magic, followed by his teleportation, followed by his immortality. Lucius paused to make sure the words he spoke arrived at Rias. Which they apparently did. You may wonder why I am telling you all this, no? A little, yes. You see, as I said, Naruto went down a very long road without drinking pure blood. He was already at the stage where he lost his immortality. I tried to convince him to go and drink a virgin's blood, but for very self-destructive reasons he refused. He always kept saying it was because he didn't want to approach a virgin with this kind of thing, but to tell you the truth, I think he was fed up with his life. He wanted to be mortal again. Why would he want to be mortal again? Rias asked, confused. I'll get to that later, Lucius replied. But let's assume for a moment that he indeed told the truth. Let's say he really didn't want to ask for blood. A vampire could of course always attack a virgin and drink her blood until she dies, should the need arise. And should you wonder, yes, it has to be a female virgin, even for female vampires. No idea why that is, though. But anyway, he could do that. Or he could turn said virgin into a vampire. Both ways are things Naruto would never do. He would never kill anyone innocent, and he certainly would not turn anyone into a vampire without a very good reason for it. Lucius blinked. The neutral group of vampires try their best to keep human casualties to a minimum, but when it comes down to it, their own survival is still more valued than the life of a human. Naruto thinks differently about that. He refuses to force his bloodthirst upon an innocent woman. But couldn't he just drink and leave the girl be? Rias wanted to know, and Lucius began smiling. That was exactly the question he hoped for. Because that was the crux of the matter. He could, yes. It is the way the neutral vampire faction usually handles things. Usually one woman is selected as a source of food who will follow the vampire around until her natural death. But the ritual, which is implicitly performed to make that bond happen, requires an extraordinary amount of trust on both sides. Why? Rias wanted to know, and sounded way more eager than she meant to. For that to work, the selected virgin has to give her blood voluntarily. Someone who is willing to live her life fulfilling the needs of the vampire. She has to want this. With that selfless act of giving, an unbreakable bond is formed between the vampire and the woman who was willing to feed him. In exchange for the life and power the woman provided the vampire with, he is sworn to protect the girl with all his capabilities. Declare reached yet again for his cup of coffee, which surely must have been cold by now. He didn't seem to mind, as he continued. Which wouldn't be that great of a problem, if it weren't for this. Once a vampire received blood, which was voluntarily given by a virgin, he becomes kind of addicted to it. He could have, in theory, multiple sources to bypass this, but the first source would have to allow him this action. With only one source, he will come back to her for more, whenever he needs it. Therein lies the rub. The virgin can now deny him blood, and there is literally nothing he can do about it. He can't force her, because of the pact, and he can't drink from someone else unless she'd allow him, also because of the pact. You see where this goes? The woman has the power to give the vampire all his abilities, but she also can take it away from him. Lucius explained, and Rias gulped heavily. She had no idea that she held such power over Naruto. Declare continued. Should a girl decide one day that she doesn't like her vampire anymore, she could just let him die, and there would literally be nothing he could do against it other than hoping she'd die a natural death before he does. That's why it takes so much trust, and why the neutral faction goes to great length, ensuring the food sources are chosen appropriately. It is also the reason why almost no vampire does this. They don't trust anyone enough to take the risk, so they kill the victim. It is understandable to a degree. I understand, Rias said after thinking everything through once more. But why does the virgin need to trust the vampire? Rias asked, while she was nervously shifting around on her chair. Well, that is something you should probably ask Naruto in person. Lucius smiled. He couldn't really tell her the reason. It was very personal and would possibly creep her out to no end if he told her in Naruto's stead. You fed him, didn't you? Yes. I did. And before you ask. I am still chaste, Rias said without the hint of a hesitation. She was very confident about her own sexuality and figured that Declare knew anyway. So she might as well tell. May I ask how this came to be? You letting him drink, that is, Lucius clarified. It was none of his business why she was still untouched. Rias had to suppress a small grin creeping up her lips before she answered, it was the day I resurrected him as a devil. He was unconscious and I didn't know where to go with him, so I took him home with me. When he woke up, he explained that he was an assassin. He didn't tell me anything about his vampirism. Nothing. Not even a hint. So, I thought he must be hungry after all he had been through and made him breakfast. I swear I had no idea of who he really was. He ate the breakfast, didn't he? Lucius asked, but already knew the answer. He did, Rias confirmed, nodding. That boy is such an idiot sometimes. Lucius muttered to himself. I guess you found out soon after. Yes, he was puking up blood in my bathroom when I saw his fangs. That was when I knew. I got really mad at him for not telling me, but I cut myself in the hand and let him drink. Lucius was silent for a long moment before he spoke up. He knew Naruto well, and he knew how he really was. What he didn't know was if the red-haired beauty sitting in front of him was also aware of that. Most likely not. Naruto did a good job in keeping his emotions in check. He was way too serious for his own good. Lady Grimmery, I don't know how I am going to put this, so I am just going to tell you, because you have to know. Declare spoke up, before clearing his throat carefully, almost as if he was searching for the right way to bring this up. Naruto may not seem like it, but he is very, very fragile. I told you how the neutral faction chooses their familiars carefully. He waited for Rias to nod before continuing after Naruto left the church, which up until that moment provided him a reliable source of nourishment. He didn't once partake in the ritual. He didn't seem to trust anyone enough for this. It's amazing that he seems to trust you so far, because that's definitely a first since forever. Lucius sighed heavily, rubbing over his eyes with his flat hand. This was all so complicated. You have to take good care of him. He is beyond imagination powerful, but understand that he can't control it. At least not all of it. It has to do with his past. If he gets angry, you have no idea what he is capable of doing. It's really complicated. What is important is that he needs you. It may not look like it, but you are slowly taking the place of someone else. You have to be his voice of reason when he needs it, because when the time comes, and I get the feeling that it's going to come soon, you will be the only one who can possibly stop him. Do you hear me? I'm not sure if I can follow, Mr. Declare. Rias replied, a little confused. Okay. You remember that I said Naruto had self-destructive motives for denying to drink, he asked. Rias nodded with a quick yes. I will tell you his biggest secret and the reason why I think he is fed up with being immortal. Do you know why he became a vampire in the beginning? He asked. Because of a woman he lost, Rias replied. He told you that already? Lucius was surprised. Wow, you certainly are special to him. All right, there is more to it. I don't know everything myself, but I will tell you what I know. Back when Naruto was still a human, he had a girlfriend, who later became his fiancée. A very beautiful, kind and caring woman. She loved him dearly, and so did he. You could describe them as the perfect couple. They could talk for hours on no end, joke around, laugh and enjoy their company. She was his everything, his reason to live, the reason he woke up every morning. They had promised each other that they'd marry one day and leave to a place far away. He didn't tell me why that was, but I guess there might have been some class distinctions, though I do not know if he or she was the higher up. Blacksmiths used to be highly regarded at the time. Lucius seemed to think about how that had changed over time, before he continued. Anyway, one day Naruto had to wake up to the church's bell ringing at a rather odd time. He got up and saw the home of his fiancée in flames. He rushed towards it and into the inferno to search for her. Not only did he manage to survive the firestorm, but despite the burning flames and the smoke, he somehow found her. Burnt to nothing but a pile of ash, which had her shape. Standing next to her was a devil, whose name he never told me. The devil just laughed at him, saying his deed was done, before he vanished in the flames. Lucius paused again to drink a sip of his now for sure completely cold coffee, as Rias listened closely, despite the uncomfortable feeling she was getting with each word the head of the organization spoke. Things were slowly adding up here. Did Naruto become a vampire and join the church to hunt the devil? It would have been logical. Naruto almost went insane that day, swearing he'd revenge the death of the love of his life, but knew he'd never be able to do it as a mortal human. He went to search for Dracula, the oldest and most powerful vampire at the time, and begged him for help, so he could one day slay the devil who took his fiancée away from him. Lucius looked at Rias, who seemed a little pale to him. Dracula fulfilled his wish. Ever since then, Naruto had been living for the goal of one day avenging his fiancée. He never loved another girl other than her, he said, and could see the disappointment in Ria's face. He hated devils for a long time of his life, which was why he became an inquisitor, so he could hunt them all down, hoping the one he was searching for would be among them. Over time he had to realize that not all devils were the pure, bad evil he always thought, but that there were other sources of evil as well. Not wanting to let anyone suffer his fate as well, he began hunting down everyone who was unrighteous. That included devils and fallen angels, but also demons and monsters. His view changed. He didn't hate all devils anymore. He had realized that other devils, who didn't do anything evil per se, had nothing to do with the death of his to-be wife. Over time he even had some friends, who were devils. So you are saying he realized that we aren't all completely evil and that most of us actually are just fine? Rias asked. Lucius nodded yes. And I guess that, just like he realized this, he slowly realizes that he might not ever catch the devil who took his girl away from him. Who knows, he might be dead already, for all he knows. He had turned from a determined devil hunter to one who just waits and sees. Which is the reason I believe he lost his drive. He had enough of it, and it is understandable. He had denied himself any pleasures for more than 1,000 years. And whenever he came close to someone, that person got taken away from him again. Lucius sighed. He rubbed over his eyes with his thumb and index finger, contemplating if he should tell Rias about Gabriel as well. Gabriel, the archangel and once best friend of Naruto. The girl which was able to get close to him and mend his broken soul. They were best friends. Naruto held Gabriel close. She was like his little sister. The girl he wanted to protect before anything else. But Gabriel was taken away from Naruto by God, and the vampire completely lost it after that. He went complete berserk and did unspeakable things, forcing some minor changes of the establishment on heaven. No. It was better Lucius kept this part to himself. If Rias should find out about it, she should be told by Naruto himself. Lucius sipped on his coffee before continuing. Wait, was that cold coffee suddenly steaming again? How? I guess he is tired and exhausted. But I do see a way for this to change again. The only thing he needs is to see that not everyone he grows to like will one day be suddenly gone. It will take a while for him to understand this possibility. And as this realization seeps into his mind, he surely realizes that his girl from all those years ago would not be mad at him for finally moving on. He struggles with it, maybe even fights it, but he will understand. And when that happens, the two components which are holding him back will be gone and he will be free again. He might find pleasure in living again. Lucius leaned forward to look Rias deeply in her eyes. Understand this and act accordingly, Lady Grimmery. I say it once again. He likes you, I can see it. He might not understand it himself just yet, but that doesn't change the fact. Be there for him when he needs you and don't be shy to push him a little. He once had a very big heart, which was hurt one too many times. He always needed to be forced to his luck. And not only he will be happy. You will too. Am I that transparent? Rias asked, completely caught off guard. Naruto's behavior suddenly made a lot more sense. He was struggling with his feelings for her. He wanted to be close to her, but at the same time felt like was betraying the girl from his past, all while being afraid that if he allowed himself to be close to Rias, he'd just end up losing her again. Rias finally understood. Well, you fed a complete stranger, a vampire, your blood. That goes a long way in judging your intentions. Lucius smiled. He was mourning the loss of his love for centuries and always kept true to his promise for vengeance. How faithful do you think he is going to be to someone who is actually still around? He did drink your blood already and let you live. I think his heart already decided. It's just his head which has to catch up. You have no idea how thankful I am for you telling me this, Rias confessed. Oh, don't mention it. Just promise me you will take good care of him. Of course, I promise, Rias said with a serious expression on her face. She did mean it. I am happy to hear this, Lucius said. Oh, two more things, I almost forgot. If you don't want him to go into full berserk mode during battle, make sure you let him drink before it. Or he won't be able to hold back and just obliterate everything in his way. It's no guarantee that it won't happen anyway, it's just a lot less likely. Seeing blood, even small amounts, pushes all the wrong buttons in a vampire. He forgets who he is. I will keep it in mind, Rias replied, and the second thing? Yes. This is a little delicate. Lucius cleared his throat. Are you easily jealous? He asked. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say, but I guess everyone is a little from time to time. Why? One of his, let's call it skills, is, well, he will attract women like honey attracts ants. Rias' eyes went wide at that. Are you serious? It's natural, he can't help it. His body produces hormones to attract girls. This was originally defined food more easily. Rias sighed. Great, what have I gotten myself into? Lucius chuckled. Relax, Lady Grimmery. Naruto is extremely faithful. He won't do anything you aren't okay with. Just get used to girls swooning all over him. Suddenly there was a knock on the door, shortly followed by Miriam entering. Excuse the interruption, sir, she said politely. You have an urgent call from Great Britain, she said. Of course, thank you, Miriam Declare nodded. Lady Grimmery and I concluded our business anyway, haven't we? He said, turning to Rias. The redhead nodded. We have, she said, standing up. Thank you for your time and all the advice, Mr. Declare, she said, bowing politely. Anytime. Should you need any help, feel free to contact me, he offered, before turning to the woman, who was obviously not only the receptionist, but also his assistant. Miriam, could you please arrange for Lady Grimmery to be brought to any destination she wishes going to? Of course, Sir, Miriam replied, bowing before turning around to lead the way. Would Rias have paid more attention to the assistant instead to the boss, she might have noticed the bite wound on Miriam's lower neck. But Rias didn't. The door closed behind her, and inside the office, Declare's skin started boiling, as all color faded away. After a moment, the warm and friendly Afro-American of maybe 60 years was gone, replaced by a tall and slender young man with an evil smirk and glowing red eyes. He reached for the phone on his desk with the calmness and precision of an experienced predator. Sir, his vicious voice asked. // Naruto was running back to his hotel. He was literally running. Not walking. Not jogging. Running. And it was great, all while not even breaking a sweat. He didn't feel that pain in his artificial legs anymore, and that brightened his mood immediately. He thought about what the old man might be telling Rias now. He was sure Lucius would tell her one thing or another about vampirism and maybe a little bit of Naruto's past. The vampire wondered how much the old man was able to pick up. He always was hyper-observant, and Naruto couldn't hide a lot from him. Hell, he hardly could hide anything from him. The two knew each other for too long. The chef of the organization surely noticed a certain affection the vampire held towards the devil. Would Lucius tell Rias something about it? Naruto did not know, but he was sure Rias would act a little different towards him from now on. Should I have told her about what it means to voluntarily give blood? But it wouldn't have played out like this if I did it differently. No, eating that breakfast was worth it. She tasted amazing, fresh, and full of power. The sweet taste of Rias' life juice flooded his memory. It was so delicious. Naruto would soon have to ask Rias for more, but he really felt uncomfortable with it. It was so intimate. Maybe he could hold back a few more days. Days she could use to stomach what she got told today. Naruto made very good progress. He was already back at Kuo. More precisely, he just entered the really beautiful park. Though he didn't have very fond memories of the place. This was the place where he died. Where Rhaenyra had killed him. Rhaenyra. Memories of the fallen angel came back to him, the look of sorrow and regret on her face when she waited at his side for him to die. She at least had the honor of a warrior, granting the defeated their last rest. Should he be thankful? The thought suddenly crossed his mind. Without Rhaenyra he'd never met Rias, would he? And without Rias his life would still be rather dark. Now there was a light again. So technically, he owed that to Rhaenyra, did he not? Suddenly his mind jumped to the very last thing he could remember on that day, the last moment before he closed his eyes and saw the fallen angel. Did she look sad? The vampire was suddenly distracted by a loud rumbling to his right. Ach! Why am I so clumsy? A voice called and forced Naruto to stop both his thoughts and his movement. He looked to his right where a nun had just tripped herself over and fell to the ground. Her suitcase opened itself and her clothes were now scattered all around her. Naruto hesitated a moment. A nun. Well, he knew a lot of very nice nuns. They always were very friendly and polite to him. They used to be the reason why he was able to live. That was a long, long time ago. Naruto shook the thought off and walked over to the young nun, whose veil was just about to be blown away by a gentle breeze. In the very same moment it went airborne, Naruto reached out and snatched it out of the wind with a precision move. He handed it back to the surprisingly young nun, who had beautiful deep green eyes and blonde hair. She blushed hard as she took the veil back from Naruto. He offered a hand to help her up, which she gladly took. Effortlessly he pulled her to her feet, trying not to do it too harshly. The blonde nun seemed rather fragile. "Can I help you?" he asked politely. "Oh. No, I am fine, thank you," the nun replied humbly, provoking a genuine laugh from Naruto. "No, you are not. Here, let me help you." Naruto quickly collected the different pieces of clothing and put it back into her suitcase. "This is much too heavy for you to carry around on your own. No wonder you tripped over. Let me carry it for you." Naruto smiled at the nun. He had no idea why he was in such a bright mood all of a sudden, but he somehow was and he wouldn't question it. "Where are you heading?" The nun blushed yet again. "Thank you so much," she exclaimed. "I'm really lost." "You don't happen to know where the church is?" "Of course I do." This way. Naruto nodded into the direction of the church. In preparation for his failed mission he memorized the whole city map, just in case. "Oh, God bless you," the nun exclaimed happily, while Naruto tried not to flinch at the sudden pain that shot into his head. "What the hell, man, you are dead. I wouldn't want your blessing even if you still were able to give it." "My name is Asia Argento, by the way," she continued. "Asia? What a beautiful name," Naruto said. "My name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. You aren't from around here either, are you?" Asia wanted to know. It was pretty obvious, he did look rather foreign. "No, I was born in Germany. But I live here now," Naruto replied. "Damn, I still have to buy a house. I better do that after I show Asia to the church." Yes, Naruto could easily buy a house as if it wasn't a big deal. Oh, the praise of money. Oh, wow. I never thought I might meet someone from Europe here. I'm from Italy. What brings you to Japan, Asia? Italy is a beautiful country, why leave it? Naruto asked curiously. Italy was a beautiful country. Naruto spent the majority of his life in Italy and still found it beautiful. The landscapes, the culture, the people. It was just wonderful. Oh. I was requested by the church here. So here I am, she replied shyly. And because I was excommunicated for being a heretic. I see, did you? Naruto wanted to ask if she actually wanted to come or if it was decided without her being asked about it, but he didn't get to ask. A boy on his bike seemed to have lost control as he crashed into a curb, before dramatically face-planting onto the sidewalk. Naruto had to suppress a snort, but it just looked ridiculously funny. "Oh, you," Naruto said instead. "Are you all right, kid?" he asked, walking over to the poor boy. "My leg." The kid cried. His knee was bleeding pretty badly. Naruto quickly turned around as he felt that rush of thirst boiling up inside of him. "Not now. Not here. Get your shit together, this is hardly the time." He actually thought about calling an ambulance, but Asia was faster. "Don't worry," she said, crouching down beside the boy with a motherly smile. Her beautiful green eyes were sparkling. "A big boy like you shouldn't cry like this." She spread her hands out and a faint green shimmer surrounded his knees. "See, it's already better, isn't it?" she said gently. Naruto risked a glimpse and was able to see the green light fading away. The boy's injuries were completely gone. "How did you do that, lady?" the boy asked in amazement. He never saw anything like this in his life before, and he most likely would never again. "Oh, it's magical." Asia smiled at him. "Now get your bike and be careful next time, all right?" "I will." "Thank you." The boy jumped up, bowed deeply and grabbed his bike, before he stormed off again. Asia stood up and watched him leave with a half-proud, half-sad smile on her lips. "That is a beautiful power you have," Asia, Naruto said, and meant it. His powers were only meant for destruction, annihilation, death, and bane. He could do no good with them, no matter how hard he'd try. Not that he tried, he liked his powers. They made him who he was. But he would never be able to add something good to the world. All he could do was remove evil. Ha, a vampire reincarnated as a devil thinking about removing evil. Talk about irony. Yes. It's wonderful. Really, it is a blessing, Asia said, and Naruto had the feeling she needed to convince herself. He frowned a little bit and decided to change the topic. "Come now, the church is this way," he said politely. "You want to get some ice cream before?" "You look like you could use it," Naruto suggested. "Oh, I'd love to," Asia exclaimed happily and smiled, before it suddenly faded away, like she remembered something important. "But I have no money," she whispered. Naruto laughed at that. She was just so innocent. "Don't worry about it. It's on the house," he laughed. No idea how it happened, but he spent the next few hours showing Asia around town, while making sure she was having a good time. Something about her made him want to protect the fragile thing. He got the feeling from the first moment, but when she told him her deepest wish was to have friends, Naruto was sold. He would make sure that she had a good day.